Hello, friends. Okay, I'm going live, but I'm not going to be sticking around here. So what you're about to see is a 2-hour video that I created and was going to just upload, but as I noted here in the chat, I was getting kind of crunched on disk space, and I don't want to even think about how to solve that at the moment, so got other stuff to do. So instead, I'm going to start this playing, and what you're going to see is a speed paint. You'll see the finished shot first, and then you'll see a speed paint of the entire process, which I'm looking at the timeline. The speed paint only takes about 2.5 minutes, although I did comment over it. And then what you're going to see is the entire session that I'm kind of scrolling through here. So with that, I will turn off my microphone and start the playback and have fun, those who want to watch it. And as I noted also in the chat, I might hop on live at 5 o'clock, but for now this is pre-recorded. So starting in about 5 seconds. Okay, so for this shot, here we have the shot. The whole thing took about 3 hours from beginning to end. And now what we see here is a speed paint. So if you want to keep watching after the speed paint, you're going to see the whole about, I think, 2 hours of explaining how it was all done. So basically the big things, the big takeaways have to do with using transform masks to move animated elements like his hand there around. Frankly, for me, the shot gets more interesting later on when I explore how to create reflections and shadows and rim lights in a shot like this, all really pretty quickly. But using a perspective-based transform mask really was quite useful, it turns out, for the shadows. Okay, this was a useful technique too. What I did was I created a dummy layer and actually blocked in my animation using the dummy layer as a guide. And it turns out that's really a technique. I don't use that often, but it can really come in handy to map out what you're going to do in terms of movement. So that was kind of an interesting thing to explore and learn. And here I actually used an AI generated background image that I got from Crayon. I don't know if it's crayon.com or whatever, but it's like the word crayon with an extra I in there, so you can look it up. But it's basically a stripped down dolly. Pretty much everything in the background painting got painted over, so I didn't really steal the image that was generated by AI, and I don't even know what the restrictions are for potential commercial use, but pretty much everything in the painting, it was a starting point, but everything got painted over. So but as you can see here, the creation of reflections and shadows probably for some people would be quite a useful exploration in terms of figuring out how to do that in Krita. So we're getting to the end here, and then I realized that the whole shot was done daytime when it's supposed to be night. So at the end of the video, there's a 4-minute addendum showing you how to turn the shot from what we ended up with there to what we end up with here. So if you want to keep watching, okay. So instead of live streaming, I decided that this time around I would just do a recording, and I wasn't going to this morning, but once I got started, I took a couple steps on the next shot. And the very first thing I did, animation-wise, really made me laugh. It made me bust out laughing. So I'm like, okay, probably people would enjoy this process. So there's a few things to mention here real quick as they occur to me. One is, what we're doing is we've got all these keyframes that consist of many layers. Okay. Layer for shadow, layer for ink, layer for flatting, layer for color. Okay, and what our objective is to go from the entire storyboard which this is all actually live storyboard over here too, that hasn't been inked and painted yet, because for the most part, all of the ink and paint for fully half of the entire 2 to 3 minute sequence is going to be able to be culled from the first half. Get it? And that's how we do it in the world of making cartoons, because we want to do as little work as possible. Okay, so anyway, many of you realize that I have many times taken assets from Krita and simply cut and pasted them into Tahoma, which typically you would do because you want to use the, say, plastic tool. Well, of course you can just as easily cut and paste from Krita to Krita. Okay? So, something I noted this morning when I was cutting and pasting the first 4 poses, which really comprise the first shot, I noticed that if there's no selection, in other words, Control-Shift-A selects all, or I'm sorry, Control-A, you can see the marching ants around here, so select all. Control-Shift-A, of course, does the opposite and selects none. Well, if you take a group and go Control-C, and then you come over here to paste it in, I didn't realize it, but by default, Krita actually cuts and pastes the layer, which in this case being a group means that it cuts and pastes the group along with all of its constituent layers, which is really pretty useful. You guys might find that useful. Now normally that's not what I would be doing in this case, because the whole point is to go from this multi-layered collection, which we can always sort of parametrically or procedurally go back to and tweak and change if we need to. But if we are correct and that what we have here in terms of flat images is exactly what we want, then we can just cut and paste the flat image and work with it from there. So you'll see how that's going to happen here in just a moment. Okay, so that means you need to have a selection. So Control-A selects all. Just a little word to the wise is that if you are cutting and pasting from Krita to Tahoma, you generally want to hit Control-A so that the entire frame is selected. And because if you don't, if you do a selection like this, if you cut from Krita to Krita, I'll show you here. I'm going to go Control-Shift-V, which pastes in. Well, actually, I don't need to. I'll just go to Control-V and create a new layer. Okay, you can see that Krita placed the character exactly where he was in the other scene. Well, if you're cutting and pasting into Tahoma, that will not happen. If you cut and pasted the same thing from Krita to Tahoma, the character would be centered. Tahoma is going to center the character. Now, sometimes that's desirable. Usually it's not. So just be aware of that. If you're cutting and pasting from Krita to Tahoma, you really want to go Control-A, select all, so that when you paste it over, you're actually pasting in the entire pixel grid, which means that your character is where it belongs. Okay, so what I did was I simply cut and pasted the first 4 frames. Okay, that's it. Once we get past the first 4 frames of the storyboard, technically this one could be included too, actually, now that I look at it. Control-C. And then it's really when we get here that we've got the change. So let's go here. And this would be, I'll show you in a minute, this is the character's hand. So this would, of course, be, here we go. Here's my keyframes. So I better label my layers. Pasted keys. Okay. This layer, I have actually no idea what this is right now. I think it's nothing. Okay. Pasted keys. So I'm going to paste this at the end of the sequence. Control-Shift-V. Okay. Now let me see something here. Why did it? Oh, okay. Good thing to note. Let's undo that. Undo. Okay. If you're cutting and pasting keys from Krita to Krita, when you go to a new frame where you're going to paste the key, you probably want to hit insert first, so you create a blank keyframe. Otherwise, what Krita will do is add that drawing to the previous keyframe. So you'll get this, and then you'll get the two combined. Sometimes, again, that is desirable. So that's kind of what this little lesson is about knowing your tools and knowing what your options are so that you can use those options creatively. Okay, so we got this big, long storyboard, and basically we're done with it for now. A little bit of sniffles this morning. It's kind of crazy right now how allergy season comes and goes. Okay, so there's a case to be made for taking the storyboard. I'm just kind of reporting this from a workflow standpoint as I'm looking at it, as sort of an assembly line approach. There's a bit of a tightrope I walk, okay, and the tightrope is this. When I do everything as an assembly line, there are places in the workflow where I tend to demotivate. Okay, so this is just me. You might be different, okay, but for me, it often turns out to be the case that if I do everything incrementally, especially if the storytelling is really coming together well in, say, the pencil test, then sometimes it's kind of demotivating to go in and have to do the grunt work that isn't as creative. It's cool in the sense that it makes the thing look good. But my point being, sometimes it is better to kind of like, once you've got the idea roughed in, like you do here in the storyboard, you know, your mileage may vary and you do it your way. But I can see it both ways. There are some efficiencies that are gained by doing what I'm doing here, where I ink and paint each character one at a time and I just go down the assembly line. I'm not finishing the scenes. That's what I'm doing here. Versus going from the pencil test to actually finishing out every scene one at a time. This has got one of the, I suppose, inherent advantages of this approach is you can really tell if the show is coming together, you know, from a storytelling standpoint, right? So, well, I talk about this fairly frequently, little things that I think about in the process. And the reason I do it is because I want you guys to understand the mental flow. When you're doing animation, you're spending a lot of time on a single thing, and it really becomes a question of where are your minutes and your hours going, and are they getting you to where you want to be, and are you having a good time doing it? Okay. And we're trying to have a very, very good time, aren't we? Yes, of course we are. All right, so getting back to this, let me give you the backdrop of why I sort of gave that diatribe right now. Right now I have a few choices. I could take and create, I could just cut the keyframes into new Krita scenes, and then I could spend an entire half a day doing nothing more than saving these Krita files, probably pre-rendering the 80 frames for every one of them, just pre-render them, and actually cutting them into the show. So in the edit, it would still look like the storyboard, because basically nothing's moving, although the timing would probably be a little more refined from what you see in the storyboard, which is this here. If we look at the show, we're looking at the show. This is the stuff that's done, and now this is the thing I'm working on right now that's still in storyboard form. Okay? So you have to decide, what are you going to do? You're going to save and render out all these shots. Speaking to the psycho-emotional aspect of it that I mentioned a few moments ago when I so rudely interrupted myself, the debate comes that you do all the infrastructure of creating your scene files and pre-rendering them and blah, blah, blah. And now, for some people, they're going to now look at the fact that, oh my God, now I've got 50 scenes that I have to do. Wow, it seems like a big job. So sometimes when you just kind of play these mental tricks on yourself psychologically, it's for some people it's probably easier to say, no, let's just finish one at a time and kind of stay in the present, if you will, and just trudge away and finish it as you go. That would be the more unusual way to do it. That's typically closer to the way I usually do it. It's just my preference. There's no right or wrong to it. If you were working in a group, you know, as an employee on a large animation project, the likelihood is you're going to have more of an assembly line approach, which is probably more well advised. Anyway, enough about that. It's your choice what you want to do. Now, little details. One thing I notice here is that the pasted layers are not pinned to the timeline. So you see here this little icon? You want to click that. So as early as possible in the flow, in the process, as early as possible, you want to do the needful things that get you kind of sort of where you want to be. Now watch what's about to happen. I'm not going to save and render this right now. Well, actually, I guess I will save it. What is this? This would be shot number. I'm looking at my edit. It looks to me like this would be shot number 3-24. So let's save as. We want to be here. Salt and light scenes. E for episode 3, and then that's 22. I'm gonna skip 23. Then we're gonna create a new folder, call this 0324. It is interesting to think about having a slightly different naming convention that gives you a sense of the sequence. Right now we've got the scenes. We've got episode 3, scene 1, episode 3, scene 2. 324, obviously. It would be interesting to consider if you had, say, 030324. So that'd be scene 24, which is part of sequence 3 in episode 3. Something like that. I don't know. Let me think about that one. Okay, so 03-24, we've saved it. Okay, so the first thing I did was I took this drawing, and I'm about to sneeze. Yeah, this is one of those mornings that's kind of a bit ridiculous. From the allergy standpoint, it comes and goes. Like yesterday was nothing. Today's nasty. Anyway, so what I did was here's the pasted keys. So we'll call this Feather Duster. It's really his hand. What I did was I took this drawing and I simply drew a careful selection here like that. Hit Control X, Control V, which took this little bit, pasted it into a new layer, and then I moved the layer below the other layer. This was the part that made me laugh. When I played it back, I was like, oh my gosh, this really works. Okay, I see a problem though, actually, right there. How did that happen? That could only have happened if there was an error in the selection. So that means I have to do it over. Alright, that's okay. Kill it. Okay. I guess we won't kill it, because I didn't realize that his hand was not copied but cut out of the other layers. So what I'm going to do is grab this sequence here, which Krita isn't letting me do. Just word to the wise, those who, especially those who have used Krita for animation, perhaps going back to the 4 series, Krita 4 and prior. The animation timeline, interacting with the animation timeline in Krita 5, there are greater capabilities in Krita 5, obviously. over Krita 4, especially in the animation department. However, the interaction with the timeline in Krita 5, in some respects, is worst of breed, worst practices sort of interaction. In many respects, it's like mind-numbingly dumb, really poorly implemented. Not going to get into the details right now, but what you just saw was a great example. I click and I drag. It should select a range, right? Well, it does unless there's already something there. And then it moves the key. Yeah, it's Krita is completely inconsistent in this regard, and it's kind of difficult to deal with. But there it is. Okay, so what we're going to do here is go to frame 4, hit the A key. So what we're going to do is we're not going to use a transform mask. We're going to just do hard-coded transforms. This is what we've done. We cut that out. So the only thing we have to remember if we're going to do hard-coded transforms is to set the center point for rotation. So this is where I'm looking closely at what went wrong a moment ago, because I'm not sure why that got cut. It seems to me there must have been a selection, but that's okay. We can work with it. So we'll go here. Probably take it back to there. Okay, that feels pretty good. We wanted to do a cycle of 3. Okay, so what about clones, you say? Some people out there will be obsessed with cloning. So, this whole thing could be done with clones. And actually, in light of what went wrong a moment ago, it's worth noting that this maybe should have been done with clones. Here's why. Okay, so this is the feather duster in his hand. If you go copy keyframes, if you go clone keyframes, okay, then you come back over here and you paste, okay. Now, if there was anything about the drawing that was problematic, if you fixed it in one cell, it would fix it in all of the cells. So that's the purpose of cloning. Now the problem with cloning, basically, is that you really need to do it every time. Otherwise, Krita will, like for example, if I go control, let's just try this. I'm going to hit control, drag. Okay, and the reason I'm going to do that, I'm actually going to make this adjustment here real quick. But the reason I'm going to do that is so that we can test if it creates more clones or not. Oh, okay. So this strategy doesn't work at all. Think about this. As far as Krita was concerned, every time I did the transformation, like I just did, it was changing the drawing. Okay, so that transformation is not a modification of a drawing. It is actually changing the drawing itself. You're actually shifting the pixels around. So that means that the whole cloning idea doesn't work at all here. The only way you could make it work is to well, you'd create clones and then you'd use a transform mask, which of course is completely stupid because the whole purpose of the transform mask is that it's just adding animation data on top of a single drawing. So what's the point of having the clones? You don't need them because you just need to do the transformation. So there really isn't any good use case here for cloning, except maybe here. Maybe here. We could go clone keyframes, and then we'll go paste keyframes. Okay, and I think what that means, we're finding out as we go here, is that this, yeah, see, that frame's going to have the dot. Okay, so that's really what we wanted. Okay, so we could do the same thing again. You could clone these two and Control Shift. What would it be? Control V? I actually don't know if I don't have a hotkey for that. It's kind of stupid, actually. Okay, so like I said, with Krita, there are some things in Krita 5 series that are really quite useful. If you look at the menu here, for example, at the capabilities of doing manipulation, like cloning. Actually, cloning is new to Krita 5. Okay, so the ability to do some of these things in the timeline with your animation keys and whatnot is definitely an improvement in Krita 5. The thing that is deficient and sometimes comically bad is working with your mouse or your tablet to, just click and drag and do things interactively. That's where it's pretty awful. Okay. So we've got this interesting little dynamic. And what is interesting about it is, from a storytelling standpoint, it really makes me think maybe we want to reuse this over and over and over again. The whole cloning thing is starting to look more interesting. In fact, the idea of a transform mask is looking very interesting. So let's think about how this would work. What I'm saying is, we know this guy's going to be, and then, by the way, in real time, if I was not talking right now, this whole thought process is something that you will find, this is like 30 seconds of thinking it through. It takes me 20 minutes to explain it, but so here's my point. Look at the drawings. Look at what this guy's doing. His legs are gonna go over to this position. So there's gonna be, it's almost like you could hear a xylophone going when he walks. It's kind of comical. And then over here, what's he gonna do down here? Well, down here, he's gonna do the same thing he did here. It's almost a musical thing, Boom, 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 he's gonna noodle on over this other location. So this is how the guy moves. So you think, okay, well, maybe I just need one drawing of his hand holding the feather duster. Maybe what we should be doing is using a transform mask for all of this on a single drawing. You could do that. The problem with that is that if you want to take this motion here and transpose it to a new position, then you would actually need two transform masks, because you need one transform mask that's doing the deedle, and you need another transform mask that's taking the whole thing as a complete unit and moving it to a new position. So in this case, we're kind of in the right place, in that what we could do is say, well, let's split the difference. We'll have a hand baked, a baked in little hand motion, but then we'll use a transform mask to just change it to a new position. Okay? So if I'm going to get into a transform mask, then I'm going to save my work. So add a transform mask, and typically I'm just going to put in a keyframe on the first frame. And in this case, I'm going to move the keyframe. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to control drag and double that keyframe here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this vis-a-vis the transform mask. And by the way, actually, I am going to move this to here. If I don't put this keyframe here, then Krita is going to interpolate quite rightly. I mean, this is normally what you would want, is it's going to take the whole hand motion and all and gradually move it from this position to this position down here. That's not what we want. We want it to stay in the top position, and then once we're ready for the new shot, there we go. Now, it's not quite that simple. In all reality, this should probably be like this. So I'll show you here what's going to happen. We're going to grab this, and we're going to move it down here, like so. It doesn't need to be exactly, because the hand is going to get erased from the other shot. Okay, so now if we take this batch of keyframes and drag them down to here, then you'll see that everything works the way we want it to. Deedle-deedle-deedle. Okay, moves down to there. Deedle-deedle-deedle. Get it? Okay. So why have this gap here? Well, because he's going to walk. He's actually going to walk from here to here. So we're going to be doing a little animation thing with his legs as well. Okay. So that's what's going on there. So again, these are all thought processes that typically are going to happen in seconds as you get more and more familiar with the tool. Okay. So here, importantly, what we want to do is solo this layer, and we'll just hit the G key and put it in erase mode. Boop, gone. And then I'm going to hit the B key so I can actually brush it and, you know, fine tune the erasing quite nicely indeed. There you go. So now when we play it back, cool. So then what we'll do is, and by the way, I want this transform mask pinned to the timeline. The thing I've noticed is if I just create a new frame or a new layer, as you can see right there, Krita by default, when you create a new layer, pins it to the timeline, which I tend to want. If you cut and paste, and that process either from another Krita file or another program or another layer, when you cut and paste, I can't say definitively that it definitely never pins the the layer that gets created. I can't say definitively that it never is created with the pin to the timeline active, but I think it's not. Whenever I have layers that for some stupid reason I'm getting confused because something's selected up here but it's not showing up down here, and it's because it wasn't pinned to the timeline, usually it's because it was a layer that I did not actively create by hitting the plus button. So it's just something to be aware of, because it can be confusing when all of a sudden what you think you've selected up here just isn't showing up down here. Okay. So now the question becomes, how do we get from here to here? This might be a time for skins. First thing we're going to do here is hit Control. Let's see. I guess probably I want to do it here. I'm thinking I'm going to want 3 frames. This is a bit of a tricky move, because what we're going to do I'm going to try it a couple different ways here. I think step 1 is I'm going to take this leg and move it over like that. Okay, so we're going to pretend that he's moving horizontally on the screen. I have to imagine it. So that's not actually, oops, okay, we got a problem. I got to reselect that. We're not going to worry about the gaps that get created here that are going to have to be fixed or erased. That's going to take 1 minute to do. It's just not something to worry about at the moment. So I'm going to hit Alt so that I can actually chop a piece out of the selection like that. A key, set the center, and now his leg's actually going to extend a little bit further that way. Okay. Now, presumably, I'm really having to think this through, because if I make a too severe of a mistake, then I'll have to redo kind of a lot of work probably. But I'm going to hit Control. Actually, I'm even going to clone him. Well, hold on. This is really one of these things you got to think through, but if I clone these, I guess I could, though. I'll clone him. You'll see why I'm kind of wrestling with it here in half a second. Okay, so these are cloned. But we have to also fold the other leg into the process, right? So here, I'm going to say he starts with this leg going in. So when that leg goes out, this leg probably also needs to go out, I think, unless I'm having a severe dyslexia moment. Okay, so now that's echoed over there. And then here, I want to hit shift so I can actually add to the selection now, like that. A key. And then this wants to be something like that, and I really like that. That's definitely what I was after in the characterization. So, okay. So now I'm going to loop this. That's definitely what I was after. Okay. So now it's a little more complicated because what we need to do is get him from location 1 to location 2. I'm going to turn the skins off. And we actually might have a problem now introduced by the cloning. This is actually a very interesting conundrum that you're going to have to think about and wrestle with on your own. We know that we need to animate him over a few steps. So over this, you know, his legs do this and his body is supposed to go this way. Clearly. Well, the problem is if I use the A key to move him, let's just do an exaggerated version, then we go to this keyframe and we see that it did the same thing. Right? The clone is... So that breaks our workflow. The only way we can make this work now is actually to use a transform mask or convert the clones into just baked in keyframes. So it's an interesting problem, not a big deal. We'll work with it here. But the clear solution would probably be to add a transform mask. And now we're getting into the zone where you think about if you're going to be stacking up a lot of transform masks and things, you probably want to consider baking it down at the earliest opportunity. Otherwise, you're really making Krita think through a lot of things that it's going to have to sort out every time you try to play back your animation. So this is where we're trying to get to. So what we'll do is we'll move, well, what we need to do is move this over to here, and this is really uncool. This underscores why using the transform mask was probably not the greatest idea, because the problem is, or else you could solve it by having some of these other keyframes being in different layers. Because being in the same layer, by moving it via the transform mask, I'm actually causing the next drawing to move as well, which I don't want. I didn't want that to move. So that means what I actually need to do here, if you think about it, is I need to move him over, but then take the first keyframe where he started and copy it here so that he actually scoots over and then jumps back to his final position. Okay? Now, for me, there are really two things we should do here. One is let's create another layer and take these later keyframes and just get them the hell out of that layer. And then the next thing we're going to do is take this layer that we just added the transform mask to, and let's just, we want to flatten it. I don't recommend using flatten layer because it tends to be buggy, especially if the reason you're flattening has to do with the transform mask. To introduce a bunch of visual artifacts that completely ruin your drawing, you know, is like highly likely. How do you solve that? You Control G and you put the layer that you want to flatten in a group, And instead of flattening the layer, you merge the group. Merge group is way more performant and way less buggy, and yet it gives you the same exact result. Okay? So now I'm going to take these keyframes and drag them back into here, and I can delete this layer. That was just a temporary layer to hold those keyframes while I did my work. Okay, so you can see that we're kind of partway there. Okay. So this transform mask is okay because it's just for the purpose of taking the animated sequence and moving it from position to position. No big deal. Okay, so what do we do with our character in between? Well, one, what we're gonna want to do here is kind of interesting. I'm gonna recommend doing it this way. I'm gonna take a selection. I'm gonna make a selection that's a little wider than I want it to be. Okay. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the A key, but I'm gonna use liquify, and I'm gonna keep my liquify kind of up a little higher. So you're likely to introduce some distortions down here. You can actually see it right there. That's okay. Easy to fix, as you can see. But gives you pretty nice control over the distortion of what you're trying to do. If you did a standard transform, obviously you're going to create a fairly big, a hole that you're going to have to patch. If you use liquify, well, as you can see, liquify is a little dangerous too, actually. But yeah, you just feel it. You just try different things and see what works. So in this case, we've got some latitude because this is a one-frame tween. Okay, this goes by real fast. And so if it's a little fuzzy or a little distorted, your audience is never going to see that. Okay, now what we need to do is a little more tricky. Okay, first of all, I want to get his hand down to the lower position. So now at this point, I'm going to ignore this. I don't care about that hand because we're going to insert new transform mask keyframes to get the hand to where it needs to be after we animate the arm. Okay, so here, this keyframe could probably remain. This one's going to have to be modified a lot. Okay, and this could be done the old school way. Let's just do it like this. And then we will obviously paint over that to patch it up. No big deal. So then this one is going to kind of split the difference. We'll try it with liquify, although we may regret it. That's probably okay. That's probably okay. You can get away with that. Here, again, being a one-frame tween, we probably can do that, and it's fine. This is obviously not acceptable, and this, we're into the new drawing. So, okay. So what do we do to fix this? Well, what we do is we just grab our, in this case, I think I'll grab the G key, which is the freehand path tool, and stop everything. I need to use a different brush. So we could do that and lasso things, or we could just use our brush, which this is what that brush does, and we can just paint over it. This is probably the easiest solution in this case, is just paint over it, hit the E key to erase, clean that out a little bit right there, and then sample the outline color. And just carefully making sure you're not pressing too hard. Okay, so now what we do is we turn this back on, and we're going to, and why isn't he pinned to the timeline? Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move the hand. So we're going into the transform mask, A key, and now, and by the way, this center point should be there. Okay, and now because of the, probably because of the shift in the center point, that's really not where it needs to be. Okay. And now I'm going to have to stop because my nose is literally starting to drip. This sucks. God, I hate September. Every year, it's the worst. So we'll look at how the animation goes, and then we will quit. Look at that. Isn't that perfect? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay, save our work, and that's it for now. Okay, I figured I should start recording again. I kind of skipped a bunch. But suffice to say, I mean, I think I explained it pretty well with the transform masks. Once I got the motion working the way I wanted it to work, then I simply took the groups, hit Control G, the groups with the transform masks, hit Control G to put them in a group, and then clicked Merge Group, which is way less dangerous in terms of creating bizarre pixel artifacts than flattening the layer. So if you took these two, put them in a group, you would not want to, well, okay, you would want to merge the group. Now, flatten layer isn't here because it doesn't make sense. If we go with these two, so usually flattening the layer has to do with when you've added a transform mask or something of that nature. So if you go flatten layer to bake a transform mask into the layer, you're highly likely to wind up with a bunch of garbage in your art. It's just what I've experienced over, you know, quite a few moons of working with Krita. So something to be aware of. So anyway, I merged the groups, and actually Krita just blew up. So, and who knows why? It's kind of interesting because all I did was add a transform mask and then delete them, and that right there shows you how fragile transform masks are. They're extremely fragile. When you're using a transform mask, you want to use them in the right way, and you want to bake them down into hard-coded keyframes as early as possible, because otherwise you really are inviting crash. Okay, so word to the wise, be aware, do whatever you want to do at your own risk. Okay, so I believe that's the shot. So, well, you know, and I like to sort of have my, I like working at the bare metal level for the most part. So, for me, hard-coded animation keyframes are generally a good thing. It's just that you kind of have to think in reverse about what you plan to do. And I'm going to show you right now a technique to make that easier. Okay, and here's the technique. Use a dummy frame to plan your work. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. We know we're starting with our character, and I'm doing this on another, I said dummy frame, I meant dummy layer, sorry. Okay, we know our character is here, and he's going to get to here. Okay, so, and this is how the great animators of old certainly would have done it. So we know we're going to have a path from here to here, and we're going to have a path from here to here. Now the question just becomes, over how many frames is this going to occur? This is what you've seen on, well, if you've looked at, you know, legendary animation art, you'll see a lot of things like this, where that's really what I'm doing here. I'm drawing it straight into the art because I can easily create these other layers, whereas in the old days, of course, the dudes that were doing the amazing art for Disney or whatever, obviously they couldn't put this stuff, these sort of indicators, over the art because it would ruin the art, right? So, all right, so for me, this guy's going to boom, bob. So from about here, he's going to be making his way over to here. So that means probably, you could even say, okay, this is going to be frame 48. You could even do that. And this is going to be 54. Okay? If you're an animator, of course, you love circles. So, so 48 to 54 means, obviously, 6 frames. 1, 2, 3. We're assuming we're not really doing any easing here, although we could. In fact, I probably will. So if this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be okay. Now let's consider the easing part of it. Let's put this here. Let's put this in the true middle. A key. Nope, sorry. I didn't have my selection. I thought I did. Okay, now I hit the A key. I'm going to drag that to there. Hit the S key. Smack that like that. Put that there. And as you can see, this final key is a little bit more snugged up to the final resting position. So he basically goes from easing out to, well, he eases in and then he eases out. So there's a smooth flow. So the speed of the action is going to basically be something like, something like this, kind of a bell curve, where he's going to be moving more slowly at the end and more quickly through the middle. So no problem. Okay, so now how are we going to do that? Well, I thought that the whole way that he moves his legs, I find kind of funny. I like that. And by the way, I can see that there's some cleanup I need to do there in the legs. That'll only take a second. So I want to actually have him move. Means what we're going to do is go to frame 48, and we already know that he's going to be there on 48. Let's just be bold now and hard code some animation keyframes. So this is wrong. Sorry, I was in the wrong layer. I need to be in this layer. Okay, so control insert, control insert, control insert, control insert, control insert, control insert. Okay, because I know I'm going to need the keyframes. I know I'm going to need them, so let's just put them in there. Okay, so now we're going to be locking to the top of the head. Okay, so I'm hitting shift, and now because we're locked to the top of the head, everything is being positioned relative to the top of the head. Here, we're going to simply raise this up, set the center to the top of the head, and then grow this to there. That was the, I don't think you guys could hear that, but the Windows sticky keys thing came on. So what you can see here is, of course, that it's kind of ridiculous to think that this guy is going to move across the room with his head and his arms not moving. Of course, that's comically ridiculous. Well, that's the whole point. That's the whole point, friends. So he's moving kind of fast, but think about it this way, guys. He's moving fast. Okay, what does that tell you? In the real world, that would mean motion blur, wouldn't it? There'd be motion blur. Why does the stupid... This keeps coming on. I'm hitting hotkeys in Krita, and Windows is so... Gosh, is it so smart or is it so dumb? I'm not sure which. That it keeps asking me if I want to turn on sticky keys. This is where a little bit of artificial intelligence built into Windows would actually be kind of a neat thing. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the idea that you don't necessarily want the good folks at Microsoft watching everything you do for years on end. However, it must be said that if you've had the sticky keys spontaneously turn on 300 times over the course of a couple of years, and every single time it's come on, you've said, no, I don't want to turn on sticky keys, you made a mistake. You'd think after several hundred times, it would figure it out. It'd go, oh, I get it. When I invoke the very question, that must be a mistake. Is Windows that smart? Nope. Okay. So now here's the motion without any actual drawings. Okay, so the point I was getting at a moment ago is that you might be a little panicked because you're saying, oh, this is going to be kind of blurry because it's being scaled up so much. Well, wait a second. If you were shooting video and a human being was moving that quickly, what would happen? Use your brain. Obviously, there would be tons of motion blur, wouldn't there? Everything would be blurred. So if it's blurred, that's perfectly normal. Now this is really quite an interesting pose because it says to me, I'm actually going to play around with, since we've got the timing already mapped out, I'm going to turn this way down. Actually, I think I can just turn it off. So here's what I'm thinking. I think this is going to be kind of fun. In the character, I'm thinking that we may even be able to use this slide. I never thought of that until now, but it might be kind of cute. Well, how would that work? Well, first thing that would happen, let's turn the skins on just so we can see what we're doing. The first thing that would happen would be this leg would have to come back. Now, let's think about this in 2 steps, actually. So this is what I was talking about, thinking in reverse. The first step would be that it would bend at the foot, okay? And now if you want to be careful, what you can do is just do it in multiple steps to make sure it turns out the way you want, okay? So now I'm going to say, if we're going to do that, now when I say working in reverse, in the real world what would happen is what I'm about to show right here. The leg would move in like that, and as a result of the leg moving in, the foot would be forced to go from this pointed out position to in like that. Obviously, I bent it too much. Whereas in animation, because the movement of the leg includes the foot, you have to think in reverse. Bend the foot first, and then, you know, move the leg. So if you can kind of get comfortable with thinking in reverse like that, you will discover that doing hard-coded animation with forward kinematics is actually almost as fast as, in many cases, as doing a fully rigged IK type setup like you often see in CGI. Okay, so now if we're going to do this, this is an attitude thing. So for me, I want to move this out and give this about a 2-frame breather. So it's like, boom, boom. Okay, so I'm not guaranteeing that this is going to work perfectly well. Okay, just so you know, friends. I'm just playing with an idea because this is striking me kind of funny and entertaining at the moment, so why not? So the first thing we want to do is a little patching here to just clean this up. So what we have here is the question of whether the feet should be moving. I tend to still think they should. This was it's kind of like the Johnny Quest, Johnny Slide kind of thing, right? He's going, broom, broom, and he actually slides across the room. Of course that's ridiculous. But it's kind of funny looking. I am really tossed on this one. I actually think the slide is better. That is funny. Okay, so the problem here for me is that if I want to play around with this and try different ways, I'm going to have to copy the keyframes to another layer because the positioning of the legs and the movement of the entire body, that of course includes the legs, are all baked together into single frames, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab from here to here and hit Control, drag, and just make a copy here. And turn this off just so I can experiment with what this might look like. Okay? So the concept is he positions, and then, yeah, literally from the first frame he's in motion. So that says to me, I'm thinking first frame would be leg in. Okay, so let's play with that. Okay, So A key, and by the way, you can do it, obviously I said you have to think in reverse, but you can do it this way too. You can do it forward. Now the danger here that I've just created a problem for myself is that I'm actually going to erase part of his other heel because they do overlap. So I think just to make my job easier, I'm going to stop there. Would it be better if they overlapped? Probably, but I'm going to be a lazy bum and say, no, I'd rather just make my life easy. So I don't need to worry about cleaning this up right now. That's not important. Okay, so here, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this again shows you how quick you can do this stuff. Boom, boom. S key, grab this. A key, set the center. There it is. I'm actually going to angle the foot up a bit on that one. And now we're just going to review the motion. Okay. Example of what I was talking about earlier. You can't even click a frame. Like, you can click a frame and then hit shift and it'll create a selection. Unless there is actually something in the frame. Then you hit shift, it doesn't work. It assumes what you must want by clicking, by hitting shift, not just by clicking. I mean, obviously if you click, it's going to select this one. If you hit shift and you click, it won't select, it not only won't select a selection of frames, but it also somehow, I have no idea how, once again triggered for the 301st time, Windows to ask me if I want to turn on sticky keys. And see, now this is the part about Krita that's really going to make you want to tear your eyeballs out, is I just did it again, and this time it worked. Okay, and now this is quite interesting. What we see is the motion is so quick that it turns out the animation of the legs did not matter a bit. Okay, what that says to me, you know what that says to me? I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn this guide back on, and I am going to apply, and I'm going to turn this on. I think I'm going to apply motion blur to those frames. I think I'm going to do the slide and apply motion blur to it. So you might be going, what the heck are you talking about? This is motion blur. Okay, you usually want to turn it way up, and then you can play around with the angle. In this case, it looks like it's kind of oriented the right way, but not quite. We want to, is that moving in the right direction? That's moving in the wrong direction. So I'm thinking basically minus 20 degrees. Ah, it's close. We basically want about minus 15, I think. I just want the motion blur to be pointing him in the right direction. So Control Shift F. I mean, just Shift Control F. I'm sorry. Let me say it again. Control F. Control F repeats the last effect. Okay, and then here. Well, actually, this one probably should have it too. So I'm going to grab this frame. I want to find out right now from Krita. Hey, if I click this, but I haven't actually selected the layer, are you going to put the effect on this layer or this layer? I literally have no idea. And the answer is it's going to put it on this layer. So for many aspects of manipulating keyframes, you can work in the timeline and it doesn't matter what layer is selected over here. For many operations, it's the opposite. You have to specifically have selected that correct layer in order to get the result you were after. So now let's just see what this looks like. It may not work very well, but we give it a try. I actually think it's brilliant. And the reason it's brilliant is it's congruent with the attitude and the vibe that this whole character is supposed to have. It really is. We'll put a sliding sound effect. And this is kind of amazing because having done this publicly, recording this, it's kind of amazing that this whole shot, all I need to do is drop in the background, and the whole shot was completed in about an hour. Now, how often do you get an 8-second fully animated shot done start to finish in a little over an hour? If I wasn't sitting here talking, the whole thing would have taken about 40 minutes, pretty sure. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and start doing a little bit of cleanup. No worries. B key, and we're just going to deal with the dark brown shadow color first. So this is a great example of where you've lost the benefit that you have in the storyboard of having the ink and the paint all on different layers. Everything's baked together, but what you discover in practice is once you start reusing these assets, it goes really fast. I mean, it just doesn't take that much time to go in and correct that, boom, boom, boom. Okay, and now we're going to grab the ink color, and we're actually just working backwards now. Oops, I want to reinforce that line as well. Reinforce. Whoops. And the thing is that, you like to draw, right? It's fun to draw. So, this is giving you plenty of drawing practice. Well, Disney Plus sent me a thing talking about their wonderfully exciting ad-supported tier. I'm thinking to myself, like an idiot, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that means, kind of like Freevee or Tubi. Disney Plus is going to have a tier where you say, hey, I get to watch for free in exchange for I'm going to have to suffer through some ads. I thought, I'd consider that. Why not? No. Disney's idea of an ad-supported tier is to have charge you $9.99, which is more than I paid the first year for the full no ads Disney Plus, which to me it was a good value. I think I paid something like $70 for the year, like $7 a month kind of thing, maybe a little more, $6-7 a month. Like, to me, well worth it. And then they raised the price, and I quit because I'm like, I don't care, it's not like that much. I don't watch it that much. It's worth it. And now they're announcing an ad-supported tier of service, which really just means that what you used to get for free for less than $10 a month, you can now spend $10 a month and suffer through the ads. Must be something about those streaming fees, whatever they're paying for their CDN to deliver the streaming, must be costing Disney a little more than they thought it was going to, or something. Or they're just being, a little bit predatory and saying, look, you think about it, if you raise your price 20%, by definition, that means that 20% of your customers have to quit, drop your service, in order for the price increase to have been a mistake for the company that, put in the price increase. You have to lose 20% of your customers for you to say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Generally, price increases are a good thing for the company doing the price increase, actually, because you can have a price increase that's a little annoying, but it's not enough to make you quit. And so what happens is you wind up being slightly more profitable after the price increase instead of less. Okay, we do have a little artifact here that we need to attend to, which is to hit the E key and erase this But like I said, guys, it's kind of amazing. In the neighborhood of an hour, we have a shot done. Now, if we take the AI assisted background drawing that I got from Crayon and just use that as a starting point, and I say, well, which one would this want to be? Interesting question. I tell you, I think what looks to me, I like this one, but I like the draperies here. And obviously I don't need to use any of these if I don't want to. I don't know, something about this one looks a little more regal. So I think I'm gonna take this, make a selection, Control X, Control V, turn this off. Hello. Okay. I hit Control X, Control V. Why did it not? Okay. It seems I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's turn off these two layers. This pops in. This layer pops in a duplicate. And so all I can do is keep hitting undo. Okay, so yeah, this is more than a little bit baffling. I'm in a layer. I think maybe what I did wrong was I drew a shape instead of drawing a rectangular selection. So yep, my fault. Okay, so I'm going to grab that selection right there. Control X, Control V. Okay, yeah, that was totally my fault. My mistake. And I was definitely confused there for a moment. Okay, so now let's just size this up. And we'll kind of make it roughly the right width. Do we want to see the tops of the curtains there? I don't know that that's necessary. Let's see how this feels though if we stretch it. No, I don't think we want to stretch it that way. And in order to work the way I'm wanting this shot to work, I think we need a little more what I'm trying to say is there's supposed to be sort of a dresser or a what would you call it? I'm actually having a brain fart here where I'm crawling through my brain. I'm thinking Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay, that's the trying to find the word. But you know, like a closet-y, wardrobe-y, buffet dresser kind of thing. In order to have that in the shot, there would have to be a little more room in terms of the horizon line of the floor. Yes. And here we're supposed to see some indications of a bed, and back here there really is supposed to be some indication of the furniture. Okay, so what that really means is that this should not be a window here. So this is where I said the other day there's some licensing issues with using Dolly or Crayon or whatever you're using for you know, ostensibly not necessarily just inspiration, but also for to actually use in a ostensibly professional production. I can't grok out for you what those licensing limitations are. And what I'm concerned about right now is that a moment ago I was trying to paint and nothing seemed to be happening. So I would say here we need to start busting this apart a little bit. So first thing we need to do is go ahead and put in a wall. Okay? And There's many ways we could do that, but I think the way I'm going to do it is to hit the B key and use my airbrush. Okay, so I don't even care what the color is right now. Crimson. Let's play around with some different ideas. I don't know. I'm actually thinking going over the complement. If everything is relatively muted, I think maybe something like that would be good. Okay, so I'm going to go Control C and Control Shift V, hit the A key, and then move this. Okay. I'm really starting to get a little surprised at how much stuff seems to be happening in Creed right now that I would consider kind of stupid. But just saying. Yes. Well, that's a tough one. Actually, I think what I want to do is go Control C, Control Shift V. And what I really want to do here is put in more wall in between these two sections. I don't like the fact that it pretty much all looks like a window hardware. Doesn't really work for me. So given that, I'm going to now hit the S key and just grab this curtain-y thing, Control C, Control Shift V, so you can see that we're really changing the art from what we got out of crayon. Control C, Control Shift V. I just wanted to use it as a starting point, you know. Control C, Control Shift V. I'm going to do this again because actually this is going to kind of get painted over as well. So as you can see, almost everything except the floor pretty much is going to wind up getting painted over in kind of a big way. So yeah, we'll use our oil paint brush. Why not? Let's go like this, and let's just go ahead and kind of fix that. We can just block in the color. We don't have to be careful because we're just blocking in the color at this point anyway. So as you can see, the AI art was my starting point, but not even close to what I knew I was going to end up with. And I definitely would say that this would probably be better if these curtains did go to the floor. Like so. So you didn't know we were going to be painting backgrounds, did you? Okay, and now we'll just chisel into this, kind of slap over that. Right, and then we can of course chisel back over into that as well. Easy peasy. Alright, and then here we're going to go, start adding some sense of cloth, wrinkly stuff. I'm going to say, well, near the edges where the sun's shining in, we'd see more of it, wouldn't we? Of course we would. Like so. So the question here becomes, have I violated the crayon user agreement by painting over this? I'm pretty sure I haven't, but I don't actually know that I haven't. So could the creators of Crayon AI claim that if there's any success at all in the marketplace with Salt and Light Episode 3, that in point of fact, actually they get all the credit for that, and it's because of this one AI generated background that the show was successful. And so let's take you to court and demand back royalties because it's really your wonderful AI that made the show what it is. In America, the question is, if somebody's going to do something like that, obviously that feels pretty egregious to you when you hear me describe it. The actual question is, it would be a legal calculus. It's not a moral calculus, it's a legal calculus. You say, hey, if we've got lawyers on retainer and we smell a pile of money over there that we could get for doing nothing other than having our lawyers stay busy on a case that, you know, we're paying them anyway. Got to keep them busy with something. That's kind of a lot how civil cases work. It's really just again, not a moral calculus. It is a financial calculus. Pretty crazy, huh? I don't think we'll see. It's kind of funny because it wasn't that long ago that the intellectual property rules changed, and people were pretty worried about things like this is having to do more with software, I guess, what I'm thinking of. But people were getting pretty concerned about the idea of companies like Microsoft claiming ownership of software because of some small contribution they may have made in the open source realm to the code base. As far as I can tell, that was something that people were really worried about, and then it just kind of came and went. I don't remember that anything else much ever came out of that kind of stuff. There may be more going on in the courts with software-related intellectual property that I'm aware of, and I don't know why I'm even telling that story, but okay. So you can see how the only thing left, frankly, of the original art pretty much is the floor texture and maybe the clouds. Everything else has been painted over. But was it useful as a maybe kind of a source of inspiration kind of thing? Absolutely. It just kind of saved me some time thinking about the compositional elements of it. Can we actually do this? Is kind of interesting. Look at what I'm doing here. See what I'm doing? What I'm saying is, okay, the sun shining through is actually going to, some of the light's going to bleed through those crimson curtains, and some of that crimson then is going to bleed down to the floor. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I'm having fun with this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a volumetric light like that. Okay. Now if you really want this to work, you pretty much need to give it volumetrics like so. Otherwise people aren't going to be able to, it's just going to look like a blur because there's no delineating the edges of it, let's say. So you cheat a bit by pretending that there would actually be these beams, right? Do we like better with? Do we like better without? Hard to say. I think it's too bright, for sure. I would say I like it better without. What I'm going to do is hit insert so that we basically put in a blank keyframe. And we'll call this volumetrics. Okay. And then what I want to do is just take a whole different approach to it. I want to just the faintest little hint like that. So we're really cheating in that here we would have beams that are coming across this way and this way, and because they're basically everywhere, the cool effect of it would sort of cancel itself out. And we don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some slight indicators of brighter light here at the edges, and then perhaps another little bit of a beam kind of coming across there. And I changed my mind. Well, okay. I can see from this layer that I was giving it a little bit of a vignette, and I'm destroying that vignette in this upper corner, but now I'm realizing, well, actually the vignette didn't look that good. So that's actually starting to look like a pretty cool background painting. Alright, so now I'm going back into the actual art itself as opposed to these layers that I'm adding over top of it. And what I'm feeling here, a couple things. Number one, actually the way this light is working, it seems to me, yeah, except that's a little too big. Okay, it turns out in Krita that you cannot use shift drag to change a brush size unless you're in the actual brush tool, as opposed to all the other tools that use the current brush. So, word to the wise. Now, to be fair, I probably don't need to do it the way I'm doing it here. And I'm going to add one here as well, by the way. Golik isn't in the finest part of the palace. He is, after all, pretty much just the head slave. So his windows aren't quite as nice as the king's. Okay, but this does work because now Salud he's just dusting. We don't actually need furniture there, is all I'm saying. Okay, so now what about his shadow? This is really kind of interesting. This is where this whole task is starting to become quite interesting. Let's go back here. First of all, are we happy with Salud? Let's put him in a group. Let's get rid of the background and just evaluate. If we're happy with him, why would we not want to just bake him down to a flat layer? I would say we do. So, merge the group. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this layer, and we're going to do a few things with it. Okay, so we'll call this Salud, and then this is going to be the group, and the reason we're doing this is going to be a shadow. So we'll call that shadow. Okay, this is actually going to be quite tricky now that I think about it, because the shadow's going to have to evolve over time in some way. So I better save my work. This is going to be quite an interesting exercise. If you ever wondered how to do a shadow in Krita, well, watch this. We're going to be doing everything with, I think, with masks. So we're first going to add a transform mask that's going to take our character, find his center point, and stretch him down like this. Now this is quite an interesting thing to think about right now, by the way, because what I just realized is that not only should we be putting in a shadow, but we might want to consider putting in a reflection. Okay, so let's stop everything, and just to make it simple and clean, what I'm going to do is save my work, and then, yeah, see how much Krita's having to think now? So I'm going to take this copy of what I just did and turn it off, and now we're going to get this baked down really quick. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to add, well, geez, this is, when in doubt, bake it. When in doubt, merge the group. So I'm going to merge the group. It's going to take Krita a second to calculate the transform mask for every single frame. But in a moment, you'll see why I'm doing this. Okay, that's done. Okay, now this group is turned off, so it's not going to be ostensibly chewing up any bandwidth, and you can see the problem. Okay, so that's okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually add a new transform mask to this. Okay, and just to make it simple, we will put that in a group. Now what we're going to do with the transform mask, watch this. We're going to add an animation key, and then we're going to take this and just push it right up against his feet. Okay, and now what we have to do is we're looking for the places right there, for example, where it went sideways. So now what we have to do is move this up to here, and then of course we need to duplicate this keyframe, and let's keep going. Let's just keep going. We're just looking for the issues that may arise. Okay, right there. Boom. Boom. So, you know, this is all quite fun. Not too bad to do. Okay, so right here, we want to control insert to make a copy of the previous keyframe, and that does not work apparently with transform masks. So, okay, so we're going to control drag it. Okay, and now in this case, I am actually going to do this frame by frame as opposed to trying to, you know, animate it and hope everything's going to land where it's supposed to land. It probably would, but meh. We'll just keep rocking here. Makes sense. Okay, save our work. And as you know, when in doubt with transform masks, merge your groups. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put this in a group so we can do two things. And by the way, why in the world, I didn't notice this before. Okay, okay. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Undo, 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 undo. We have bumped into a boatload of stupid. Okay, step one here on the transform mask. I did not stretch him long enough, so forgive me for that, friends. I'm going to have to go through and correct that all over the place. Now, you could correct it by adding another transform mask on top of the current transform mask, obviously. The mistake I made is I should have just done this. I should have just done a vertical flip instead of manually stretching it, because the odds of getting it right on every frame are pretty much non-existent, and actually what I'm doing right now is probably not going to work. Like, literally, it's not going to work, because there's no freaking way, and you can tell by my attitude that I'm a little annoyed at this mistake, because what this just did was it guarantees that this animation's going to chatter. And that means there's nothing I can do to fix this, other than I could manually put in the height. So we could try that. We could try that. But by some bizarre, sick, disgusting, insane twist of fate, this is not. I guess it's because I was in the I was looking at the position and not the scale, but this is kind of weird. What if we put in 100 here? 100, oh, I see. Okay, and now I'm hitting undo. I'm hitting the Z key, waiting for it to work. Okay, so I see. So this says it's 120 scale on every frame, and yet it's drifting all over the place. Okay, here's our solution, friends. Kill everything. Just forget it all. Get rid of everything. Just forget it. Start over. Quit dicking around. And here we go. So we are going to duplicate the layer. Move this down. We're not going to make this stupid mistake this time, are we? No. We're not going to make the idiotic mistake twice in a row. No, that's what we refuse to do. Okay, we're going to go to where he first starts to move. Boom. And we're going to insert a keyframe. Now, this is critical. Number one, we've got to have the center point where it belongs. Number two, vertical flip. Okay, now that, what I just saw, friends, is unforgivable. It's unforgivable, but there it is. The very idea that flipping vertically doesn't do this, doesn't respect the center point, is pretty horrid, pretty bad. That's really pretty awful, but there it is. Okay, so presumably if we switch this now manually to negative 100%, again, as you can see, Krita is basically ASAP, meaning as stupid as possible, because it's not doing what Blender has done flawlessly for 20 years, which is if you set a center point, you freaking scale around the freaking center point. Okay? Doesn't really take a brain. But that's Krita for you. Krita is often replete with those kinds of sillinesses. Unfortunately, friends, it is the truth. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to fix our problem. So yeah, I get a little saucy. I hate having to do the same work twice. I get very irritated. It's my great weakness. My great weakness is I really don't like having to repeat myself in terms of work. You know, I mean, it's because I'm an artsy-fartsy guy, and the first time you do it, it's fun, it's exciting, you're discovering the solutions to problems and stuff like that. The second time, it's just a grunt work job you got to do. See the difference? So, I have no excuse, because I'm, you know, obviously acting like a baby. But there it is, friends, there it is. But no, this is going to be actually quite cool when I'm done. It's not going to work as a shadow situation. So that's 46, so I'm making duplicates so it doesn't interpolate. And then this is really, really important. I made a mistake. This really needs to be here. No, this needs to be here. So now what I'm going to do is just assume that because we got the center point and the scale correct and we're not animating that, I assume we'll be able to just slide this around and have everything land where it's supposed to be. And the good news is now we have the basis for the shadow layer too. Everything we're doing now is going to be reused in the shadow layer. There's just going to be one additional element to make the shadow layer work. This and this. Cool. Save our work. Save. And now we'll suffer through letting Krita have to sort of fill the animation cache to make sure that this is correct. Eh. I love that slide. Okay, so the basis for the shadow layer is here. So now we can group this and we can flatten the group. We can merge it because it's going to take a second to do, but so we have everything we need to create cool reflections and also a cool shadow. The additional change in the shadow is that we're going to have to actually skew the shadow layer with a transform mask to reflect the change in his position relative to the angle of the light. So this is going to sound a little confusing, but here's what we're doing. So this is going to be the reflection, okay? And we're going to make a duplicate of this, put this over top of it, put it in a group as well, and call this his cast shadow. Okay? Cast shadow, we'll just turn it off for now. We don't need it. Let's get this dealt with first. So now here what we want to do is we want to add a new layer that's going to be an erase layer. Okay? And then we're going to take the brush, B for brush, airbrush, and we're just going to go like this, so that as we get further down on the floor, the reflection becomes more transparent. Now, it obviously needs to be, okay, stop everything, something's wrong. Oh, right. Sorry about that. What I'm doing right now, I shouldn't be doing to the erase layer. I should be doing it to the overall layer. There we go. Okay, so now what we want to do is actually turn the erase layer off and kind of just dial in what the reflection on the floor probably wants to look like. Then turn on the erase layer, and we can see that the erase layer is a little too extreme, so I'm going to actually increase too extreme, meaning that it's actually not a sharp enough transition from light to dark. I don't know if this is going to do it. It's not. It's more of a hassle than it's worth. So what we're going to do is solo the layer. Okay, we can see what's going on. So what we're going to do is make that pretty tight, but then we want to go into erase mode and make sure that up near him it's pretty bright. So let's just see what we have. Yeah, that's probably pretty close. Right? So you get the idea. And then, of course, as we get down here, we have a little bit of a problem because we can't really see it anymore. So now it's questionable. Yeah, okay, so here's what we're going to do. Watch this, guys. This is going to really help. What we're going to do is we're going to solo the erase layer, but look at what we're going to do. We're going to erase here so that when he moves over here, the reflection is still there. You see that? Okay, so now I'm marking right there, and I see that that needs to be erased even more. So actually, this is really about all we need on the erase layer to get the effect we're after. Yep. You see that? We just want to tone it down as it goes down into the floor. And now this, you could arguably play around with the overall level of reflection. Okay. And having done that, I am not going to bake that down, I think. I'm going to just turn that off, and then we're going to experiment with what we have to do to the cast shadow layer to make it work. The first thing we have to do is make everything black. So I'm going to take this whole layer and just hit the Control M, make it black, and then do multi-frame. Let's just do multi-frame because we know it all needs to be black anyway, so we might as well just let Krita bake that change into everything. Okay? This would probably be a good time to save our work. All right, now if we look at what this animation looks like, notice that by having all the transform masks and filter masks and everything turned off, Krita didn't even have to fill the animation cache. So that's a good lesson for you. Remember, Krita does really well with lots of keyframes and lots of layers. Once you start adding filter masks and things like that that have to be calculated in real time for each frame, Krita begins to struggle a lot. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to add a transform mask, and I have literally no idea if what I'm about to do is going to work. But we're going to find out. So, what's that look like? Well, step one is to hit the A key and set the center point on the transform mask. Okay. Then from that point, I don't think, can we do perspective? I don't think we can. I don't think we can do perspective with a transform mask. So what I'm about to do is probably going to either cause Krita to crash or it just won't work. Okay, I push perspective and Krita seems to be willing. That is interesting. I did not think that was going to work. Well, if we're going to do that, this would be the center point. Oh boy, if this works, it'll be awesome. So we've got to kind of move things around to make it work. And then we're going to obviously have to recolor it because everything that's off the screen didn't get colored black, which is okay. Okay, I see what the deal is. Let me really think about this for a minute. Okay, basically up to here, it pretty much works, although not exactly, not quite. Okay, point of the story is that if I had put an animation keyframe on this transform mask, what I'm doing right now would not be working. But it's working really well. Kinda. So I would say let the transform mask get us most of the way there, and then adjust it on a frame by frame basis. I would say that's probably the way to go. So cast shadow, let's merge the group. Is it Control E? Can't remember. Yeah, Control E. So it's going to merge the group. As you shall see, it's thinking. Kind of a bit of work, definitely, doing this. Okay, it's done merging. And so now what we'll do is we will take this and do the same thing we did before. So we're going to go Control M, make it black, multi-frame. Save your work. Okay. Step 2 is on a frame by frame basis, we need to adjust a little bit. It looks to me like liquefy would be the way to do it. Let's just stretch that up a little bit. Okay, so then what's going to happen is the next keyframe, well, okay, I was going to say the next keyframe would be wrong. If it was a repeat of the previous one, then it would be wrong. So here, I would just make this a little broader so we can just kind of stretch that up to where it needs to be. Okay, so right there, that's a duplicate keyframe, so we can just delete it. And that will mean that the previous one will work. Okay, here's where we're going to have a problem. Here's where we're going to have a problem because he's moving his feather duster. So this is going to be challenging. I'm going to turn the background off so I can see my onion skins. See that? Because we're going to have to match this repeatedly, which is going to be a BIT, you know what. However, what we can do is if we can get it pretty much right twice, then we should be able to copy those two keyframes. Yep, he does the same thing 3 times. So that's good news. So we can take those two and also copy them to here. That can be deleted. Deleted. Okay, now we've got a little more latitude because he's on the move, right? A slight modification. That's fine. This, likewise, it must be said, is a duplicate. So see, it used to be with Krita very reliably. If you clicked here and then you hit shift and just moved your right arrow, it would create a selection along here. Now it won't, and not only that, but you can't drag to carefully find where you're supposed to be, because if you were to drag, Krita would move the keyframe that's currently selected. It's really sad, actually. I mean, I hate to say it, but and by the way, it works in reverse. What used to work now works in reverse. Meaning if I go here and then hit shift, okay, until it doesn't. It works until it doesn't. So the only thing you can do, what Krita's done here in version 5 is make us so that we have no choice but to just like remember stuff. Okay, we have to start on frame 32, and now we have to remember to delete up to frame 38. So not the worst thing in the world, but and see, look at what just happened. I made a mistake. Tiny mistake, one mistake, I got to do the whole operation over now. But that's because of the way that you have to interact with your mouse or tablet with the Krita timeline. It's many steps backward from the functionality in Krita 4. And that's the price you pay for the features in Krita 5 that you like, basically. Okay, so now I'm going to try to clean this mess up a bit. So I so wish I could just click and do what I used to do. I used to hit shift and then just go forward. And when you saw something change in the frame, because there was a new keyframe, so you'd go forward and you'd be like, so these would all be getting selected, and then the minute you saw something different, you just go hit the back arrow and go back one, and then you'd have this selected, and then you just hit Control-Shift-X and get rid of those keyframes. It was so easy, so intuitive, so nice, and the developers completely ruined it in Krita 5. Which is also likewise kind of amazing, because how do you, it's baffling. It's baffling how you can add features to the program and so spectacularly break the stuff that worked great before. So, rant. It's just, it's so sad to me, because it's like, it's so obvious they never checked the software. They never actually checked to make sure that the stuff they were doing, didn't cause all kinds of bugs and problems and stuff. Not at all. Too bad. That's what we get. What do you expect in free software, right? So, okay, now what we want to do is blur the darn thing. So we're going to grab the whole kit and caboodle like that, and we're going to do a filter. We're not going to do a filter mask. That would be stupid. So let's just add a Gaussian blur, and probably something like that. It's multi-frame, so that's going to apply the shadow to all the layers. And now what we want to do is turn the background back on, and then just dial down the shadow. Yeah, something like that. And then here's the reflection, something like that. I can see now that the shadow's in there that the reflection feels too bright, too strong. So we'll do that. And this, okay, there's one little hiccup there in the shadow, but that's okay, we'll get to that. So let's merge the group. I think we're pretty close to where we need to be here, friends. Let's see. Looks pretty good. I just see one little hiccup there on the I think it's around frame 24 or so, maybe. I didn't see it that time. Interesting. Pretty good looking shot. Now the thing that's missing, of course, is the bed. Now there's an argument to be made. Let me see this. Yeah, the perspective on the shadow worked pretty darn freaking well, I must say. What is this? I don't even know what this is. What is this? Oh, that's the reflection layer that was boogered up. I think that was the copy that I made that I was thinking I was going to turn into the shadow layer. So there's one thing about this that is bugging me. It doesn't make sense. Well, maybe it does make sense. No. The shadow would take precedence over the reflection. Yet, it kind of looks better with the reflection taking precedence and taking, as you can see right there, taking a little bite out of the shadow. I don't think from a physics standpoint that's correct. I should think that the shadow would be blurring or occluding the reflection. Let's make the shadow a little darker and see how that feels. This is one I've never really bumped into before. The shadow feels about right there. And for whatever bizarre reason, the reflection feels better when it's on top, which really doesn't make sense. It just feels better. Visually, I just kind of like the way it feels better. So we'll go with it. Ta-da! Okay, what are we doing here on time? We've been going for an hour, so guess I was a little too enthusiastic when I talked about knocking out a shot in an hour, since obviously there's a lot that's gone on here. And we're way past an hour. But it's a great looking shot, isn't it? Now we could take it even further. We could take Salud and we could put an edge light in there, so to speak. Let me show you what I mean. This is probably sounding a little confusing. Take the character, put the character in a group. Take the group, duplicate it. Okay, the duplicate, take and add a transform mask to just offset the character a little bit, like that. Now take the one that you just added the transform mask to. You probably want to flatten it, but unfortunately, as you know, it would be wiser to put it in a group and then merge the group. So let's merge the group. So now what we have is a duplicate of our character layer that's offset a little bit. Then what we do is we alpha lock it. You see that? So that all we get is the part that is overlapping. And then what we do is we take this group and we Control M and we knock the whole thing down to black. Boom. And then what we do is we just adjust. See how easy that was? And my goodness, that really added a lot of production value for essentially no cost. Look at that. Isn't that great? Looks fantastic. So again, I guess I'll kind of say what I said earlier. You take some of this stuff, you know, the motion blur, the reflections, the shadows, the perspective, the rim light. This is an incredible looking shot in a cartoon, where the whole thing, literally from beginning to end, really only took about 2 hours. You know, not counting the initial inking of what? 4 frames. And that's pretty good production value. That's pretty good economies, because nobody gets 6 to 10 seconds of finished cartoon in, you know, almost literally from concept to completion in about 3 hours is about what I'd say it is. It's incredible. Now we do need to put in the beds still. Okay. So there is that to be said, but I'm going to save my work. I really like what I see here. And I think with that, I will end it, because, I don't know, there's probably not more you can really learn here. But there's been a lot of good tidbits in this sequence. And I do encourage, by the way, people, if you're paying attention, let me know what you think in the comments, because I virtually get no comments anymore. Not sure why. People watch the videos, but they don't comment. And maybe it's because I've been doing it long enough that everybody's sort of seen what they wanted to see, and you know, there's kind of nothing new here. It's cool, but it's not really anything new. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. So let me know in the comments what you think about this. And with that, I will say there will be more later. Boom. Before I finish with this scene, I have to confess I got the whole shot done and then realized, wait a second, it's not daytime, it's nighttime. So what I'm going to do is show you guys how you change a shot from being day to night in a hurry. Let's turn all these layers off. Okay, so this is not exactly what I had. This is closer to what I had. Okay, and I'm just going through these layers to see. Okay, so we did have this in here. Some sunbeams. Okay, so this is pretty much what we had. So I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to change this to dark? First thing I did was grab the background painting and I applied a curve operation to it. I'm going to show you on this one what, whoops, I'm going to show you on this one what that looked like. Basically the idea was that the windows need to be dark, but the everything else needs to be okay, light-ish. So this is an extreme version of what I did, but that's pretty much what it amounted to. Now normally if you're trying to do a day for night thing in a movie or whatever, curves are not going to get you there. Bringing the overall levels down also is a useful modification. But anyway, the curves operation got me to here. Then what I did was I said, well, we want to make the outside of the windows dark with a little bit of a gradient to the horizon. Okay, so that layer is in multiply mode. And let me turn all these layers back off so we're not confusing things, making it hard to understand what's going on. So we've got this color modification followed by this, which brings all the levels down. And so now these other layers like the sunbeams, which are now moonbeams, those layers are all now going to have to be modified in terms of their, their opacity and whatnot in order to kind of make it all look right. So first of all, you've got the shadows, obviously, that are being cast by these curtain barrier thingies. Next, what is this? This is basically just the crimson bleeding through. Probably for the nighttime version of this, it's probably not actually that necessary. Now the moonbeams are what really help punch it up, right? And I did that basically with an airbrush, and then I stuck the moon in there. Why not, right? So the final step, typically you're dealing with cooler colors at night, obviously, than during the day. So I decided I would take the entire shot and just use my airbrush to create this and just put that over the entire thing. I believe in nope, it's in overlay mode. So you could experiment. Multiply mode would probably be interesting. Yeah, it's going to look a little more aggressive. And I needed a little more illumination than multiply really allowed for, so I went with overlay. But that's pretty good. So anyway, pretty stupid mistake, but not unfixable by any means. So there's our shot, and that puts the final button on the shot so that when we watch it in the show, this is how the sequence goes so far. We've got an establishing shot. Again, of course, it's nighttime. And now we're here. We got the moonlight bleeding through. You still got the nice reflections and shadows. And then it's going to obviously cut to this shot. So, okay. Anyway, just wanted to add that little post fix on the speed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that. Where are we, friends? And by the way, Tom, I will tell you that the reason the audio was quieter, you guys may find this somewhat interesting or not, but the last video I posted, the reason the audio was quieter was that I've been experimenting with speaking more softly and actually developing out of a whisper as I've been actually reading out loud one of Valerie's books. Not creating an audiobook yet because the book's probably going to be modified, but I thought it was, well, actually tell you what it was 2-3 sessions ago I was giving some advice to Sifter, okay, and it was kind of important advice, right? But as I was giving the advice, I'm kind of talking along in my normal voice, I'm kind of like this, right? And I listened back to a little bit of it, and something about it bugged me. And I know this sounds a little strange, but it occurred to me to ask myself this question. Look, and there's a character and a timbre to my voice that I don't like that much, okay? And it's not bad, it's just, there's something about it that comes out strongly when I get animated, no pun intended, and you don't really hear it when I'm voice acting, when I'm actually playing a character. But it occurred to me to ask this question. If do we learn to speak in a certain way that maybe tends to come naturally, where for me, if you think about the positioning of it, right now I'm speaking from right about here. The resonance is down here in my larynx. Whereas when I'm doing, say, the voice of Asher, the resonance is right up here in my nose. Melchizedek's kind of my natural voice, which is about here. And so again, coming back down, for me as a producer, it's useful to be able to do as much of this as I can, you know. But anyway, I wanted to find out, okay, Dave, I don't remember how I stumbled across it, but basically what happened was I said, well, what if you start with a whisper? What if you bring your voice down like this? So you actually try to speak out of a whisper. And then you ostensibly allow that to begin to actually have some resonance. And it was interesting that it kind of worked, and it occurred to me that, well, you know, maybe this is something you can train. Maybe you can actually relearn how to speak. And for a lot of people, you know, it just expands your range of capabilities. It's just one more thing you can do if you can do more voices and this and that and the other. Whenever I've done like movie trailers and things, you know, you want this in a world where nothing is what it seems. You know, when you want that voice, normally I can get that voice first thing in the morning, no problem. Later in the day, like now, which is 5:04 Eastern Standard Time, it becomes a lot harder. And in a sense, I work against myself in that when I sing, I tend to be a guy who, when I was doing, you know, when I was singing rock and roll in a rock band, I was always trying to hit the high notes. You know, I was the guy in Fort Wayne, Indiana, one of only a few that could convincingly sing Journey, you know, or Boston, you know, that kind of stuff. I always thought that was cool, but there was one thing I did to myself that was kind of damaging. Okay, and what it was I was always trying to expand my singing capability on the basis of a really clear sound, like if you think about Mickey Thomas from Starship or something, or even Ann Wilson from Heart, you know, that really crystal clear kind of sound, right? And I developed it quite a ways. The problem was, there was one day about 3 years ago, I'm downstairs in the basement and I'm pumping iron, lifting weights, and I'm singing along, and you know what I did? I hit the high notes. I think I was singing along with Starship. One time too many. One time too many. And what happened was, all of a sudden I come upstairs and I'm hearing this buzz in my ear, like my ear's rattling. You know, it was like really kind of freaky. I'm like, what's going on? And I did a little research. I never saw a doctor about it or anything like that. I did some research and I found out this is called hyperacusis. So what happens is, like, you're in the kitchen doing dishes, and when the dishes rattle or something, it almost hurts, you know. It feels really loud in certain frequencies. And this is all just kind of explaining why I'm developing some new methodologies, right? And that I paid an incredibly high price for that one high note, trying to refine a sound that, if I'm honest, for me is not that pleasing of a sound in the first place. So I could hit the notes, but the tone of it really wasn't that wonderful, at least not to me. So I'm trying to be as clinical as I can, you know, and sort of evaluating my own abilities. Well, in the couple years prior to when that happened, which was a couple years ago, I had been developing this new technique where I've described here before, that is pretty much exactly what Brian Johnson does in AC/DC. It's why he can be have a really deep voice, but yet he can still hit stupidly high notes. It's just a completely different technique. Generally seeing, if you want to know what that sounds like, you can look on my YouTube channel and you can look up. There's a performance of Kathmandu by Bob Seger, and there's also a sort of karaoke performance of Man on the Silver Mountain by Rainbow, which is Ronnie James Dio. You'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the technique. But the thing about that technique that's amazing is, unlike the technique I use most of my life, it doesn't burn the voice out. It sounds like it would. It sounds like it would rip the shreds, rip your voice to shreds, but it doesn't. It's kind of amazing, actually. And I've it's the same technique that like Joe Elliott from Def Leppard. Same exact technique. They're all doing the same thing. They're singing way back in the throat. Way back in the throat. And what you find is that gives you the low notes, and it also can give you the high notes, and it doesn't rat out your voice. And it really occurred to me to think about that and go, we all have, you guys are all, as animators or as creators, you guys all have different kinds of talents. Different things that you're kind of naturally good at versus things that you really maybe have to work on to be good at. Both are important. Both are important. However, it occurred to me that I'm like, dude, you spent your whole life trying to develop a technique that, if you're honest, it actually doesn't sound that good, right? There's other things like doing imitations or the voiceovers that I do for the show that basically, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but basically to me, it's like I can compare that objectively with the people who do the voices on, cartoons that we've all seen. And it's like it compares favorably. And so I'm like, why don't you try to build more on where your natural abilities lie. And so the long-winded way of saying that, I decided, okay, I'm going to just start speaking a little more softly, only not to speak softly as a goal, but in order to remind myself like this, like right now, remind myself to start at the whisper and go up from there. Okay? And my theory is, I have reasons I won't get into why I believe this theory will hold true. It's like pumping iron. It's like pumping iron. Nothing happens fast, and you can change your physiology. I believe you can learn to speak in a new and better voice. It's just going to take probably, at least a couple years to become habituated, right? That's kind of the concept there. There goes Valerie in the background. My lovely, lovely bride. Oh, how I adore her. Yeah, I'm doing my deep voice. Hey, baby, you're looking good over there. You're looking really good to me. So what I'm doing there is something that typically would have been hard for me to do late in the day. I could have done it first thing in the morning, but until recently I haven't really been able to catch it late in the day. But yeah, like that kind of a thing. And what a wonderful thing to have if you're making cartoons, to be able to just like do all the different voices and make it work, So that's the story behind that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm speaking more softly. And because I'm speaking more softly, I didn't turn up the level of my microphone. So Tom mentioned that, hey, by the way, the level on this video is kind of low. But yeah, I mean, it's something I really should develop, because at some point I'm probably going to be doing some audiobooks for Valerie, and she's got this one, it's like a zombie story, and it's just kind of like there's characters that are I am Groot. Do the Vin Diesel thing, right? Anyway, okay, so what do we have here? We still have to, and that, I'm sure that's all completely boring to you guys, but I mention it because to me, the the craft and the struggle of simply improving yourself and trying to figure out the ways that you can improve yourself is for me a lifelong goal. That's what I want everybody, whoever comes to my YouTube channel, to be trying to do. You know, get excited, right? You can justify locally. Well, yeah. Again, my point is to try to remind myself. It's really weird because here's what you'll find if you guys want to experiment with this yourself. When you whisper, it is easier to think about what I call resonant tension. Okay, so when you are, if you're doing if you're doing sports coverage, you're doing this type of voice, blah blah blah, and blah blah blah, and well, he's just 5 yards from a touchdown or whatever, I don't know what that would be, but there's a way that I have found enormously difficult to describe in physiological terms what you're doing with your voice when you speak that way. It's easy to describe how you localize resonance. Like everybody knows, if you make a nasal sound, then you're localizing your resonance up in your sinus. When you do the deep voice, you're localizing your resonance down here in your larynx. But there's another dimension to it that has to do with maintaining the tension. So the idea is, think about this. If you have a wide range, or if you develop a wide range from whoa, and if you try to do that, you're probably going to find that you have some breaks. You're going to have some cracks in your voice where it breaks, and you cannot smoothly go from one range to another. Most people, that is, that's the normal case for a person, and the reason is simply that you haven't practiced and developed the muscles to be able to go smoothly through your ranges. So most people actually have 3 ranges. They've got their kind of, like for me, this right about here is one range, and then there's a little bit of a temptation to crack, but I've pretty much smoothed it out. So then I go to my kind of the voice I learned to speak with, which is kind of here. And then what makes me unusual as a performer, you might say, is that most people can't get from their chest voice to their head voice like this without a major break, major crack. So, and it took a lot of years to smooth that out. And a lot of the thing that helped me the most was imitation. And the reason was, if you try to imitate some voice, some cartoon character, whatever it is, when you imitate a voice, it forces you. You don't think about how you're doing it. You just try to imitate the voice, and then if you then think about how you did it, you start to become aware of different aspects of your physiology, and then you begin to use them intelligently. So as I say, when you whisper, you can feel more easily where the resonance is located. And then think about this, the thing I said when I did the big slide between the whole range. Okay, if you think about it as, let's say your entire vocal range is this wide. When you find a location of resonant tension, okay, you don't want to use your full range. You don't want to be, well, I'm going to talk like this, and now we sound like we're on a roller coaster, which is kind of like an old school. There was a time in radio where that was kind of in vogue. What you really want to do is you want to work a smaller range. So the idea is that you find your location. Like, say this is going to be my location. Let's say this is the character. Okay, this is the character. Now what you want to do is you want to use a push, a small amplitude push, to actually be what causes the pitch variation. So I say, now I'm talking to you, and I'm giving a little bit of a push every couple words. And what you find is that the push does 2 things for you. It allows you to get relatively pleasing amplitude and pitch modulation working together in a way that's natural. And the range of that variation is sufficiently small that it makes the voice feel like that's just a single voice. that's working this little range right here, even though my full voice has the capability to work a much wider range, right? So when I'm reading Valerie's book, I'm reading like this. I'm talking about it like this, and I'm talking into the air, and I'm just saying blah 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 blah, and every once in a while I kind of do a little push. I probably should create a I could create a YouTube channel just about, voice acting and how to use the voice, because it's really kind of fun, if you learn how to do it. And I believe anybody could improve themselves at least 100% if they just practice these things. But the hard part has been how to describe physiologically what you're doing. That's been the tricky part. There's another part. There's actually another. There's an emotional component too. The emotional component for me, being that I have the sort of the pathology of what we would call a people pleaser. I'm overly self-aware, and so what happens is, for me to walk into a room and just start talking to people like this, like, hey, I'm just kind of speaking softly, but my voice is palpably lower than what they might be used to hearing, right? I'm overly aware of that. Like, I'm embarrassed by it. I find it a little embarrassing. So I'm actually trying to condition myself. This is another way that I'm trying to improve myself, is I want to condition myself to not care about that. I don't care what people think. I'm just going to do what I'm doing, and if they think it's weird, that's okay. They can think it's weird. I don't care. Because they can't do what I can do. Of course, I can't do what they can do either, right? Because we're all unique and different. So, anyway, I'm glad it's interesting to you, Darren. So because my normal way of speaking is habituated, I have to sit here and remind myself the good news in all this. The really good news to me is that literally in a week, I've discovered the ability to maintain a lower register like this with resonance if I want it. I can actually, put some muscle behind it if I want to. If you want to go even lower, now you're into, my name is Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, right? And that was difficult for me to do late in the day until this week, So again, but that's me, man. I'm always going, how can I do better? How can I improve myself? So there it is, friends. Okay, so the thing that's missing in this shot, and I have to keep, because this way of talking is habituated, I have to constantly remind myself today to soften up and return to the whisper. Return to the whisper as the starting point, and then modulate from there, like that. And it's becoming habit. It actually is becoming habit. And I don't mind telling you guys that my woman kind of likes the low voice. She actually does. Yeah, that's a fact. So, boys, if you want to get some, figure out how to lower your voice a little bit. I'm only half kidding. Hey, Dave, I'm working on a custom plugin for Krita. Nice, good. To store and retrieve play ranges. Okay. Yeah, let me know how that goes. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, and I suppose to put a button on this whole conversation, the objective for me, part of it is to learn if I can train a new way of speaking that generally sounds just a little bit better most of the time than the way I've habitually tended to speak. So, there it is. Take it or leave it, friends. Okay, I'm going to add a layer, pop this up one notch, and now what we need to do is sketch this. So I'm not going to put in any keyframes because I don't want it to create new keyframes later in the timeline. So what I'm going to do is just scroll ahead, and I want to go to here. Okay, so now what are we doing? What I'm going to do is use this to find the position. If we look at the, well, I can't look at the storyboard because I've, I mean, I have to say it actually, I need to close this, so sorry guys, I'm opening the wrong file. Okay. So what we want here, sounds like you'll have a wider vocal range conversationally. Well, what I'm trying to do, Tom, honestly, is um, I'm thinking about the possibility of doing more voice work because I do think it's an area of talent as opposed to skill. I do think it's something I'm naturally good at. Obviously, all of my bills get paid by my voice because I have customers all over the country for whom I provide telephone message on hold programming, right? So you know, somebody sticks you on hold and you hear me saying, "Hey, thanks for calling XYZ company. Hey, did you know blah 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 blah." But I just, I kind of think I could do even better, Why not? Valerie's got a smile on her face. I trust that means she's having fun doing what she's doing. She's working on one of her books. So I'm going back in the I'm looking at the storyboard here. In the timeline, I guess I'll switch this so you guys can see what I'm doing here. If we look at the actual show timeline, I've already cut this storyboard off. So really what I probably need to do is just go like this. Okay, and what that does is it gives me, okay, so now I can see where the bed goes. Got that? You see? Okay, so let me just, come on, stop taking one click as a double click. All right. Okay, so now what I wanted to do was I'm going to reference that drawing right there in order to know where to put things. So I'm just going to keep it nice and loose. And I think I'll switch to my quote-unquote nice brush. Okay, it looks to me in the drawing that this is a fairly short bedpost. And the perspective from the original pencil test is kind of ancient history at this point. So I'm going to take, I think I'll just take him out, and I'm going to assume from the outset that the perspective I've established is going to work. I don't actually know that it will. But if it does, then we had a little bit of an angle here. But something like that. Yep, that actually looks about right. Looks very similar to what we had in the pencil test. Well, my complaint would be that this doesn't feel wide enough at that scale. So I'm just going to basically modify it thusly. B key. Okay. So now Goldik's bed. Again, I'm just kind of going to extend these lines out so I get some sense of the perspective. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's pretty close. If we take that to the vanishing points, we're going to be in the zone, right? So if this is a proper line, let's go to blue just so we got something to compare with. And this is a proper line, then that means, of course, we've got a vanishing point back here somewhere. And that suggests that the bottom of this post should probably be about there. And what we want is just a slight angling down. So those of you who are dying to make a comment about the perspective helper tools, whatever those are, don't bother. I don't care. I don't want to use them. I'm not interested in learning them right now, and I just don't care. So we're just going to put a pillow on the bed, and then the idea was that there's all kinds of crumpled up blankies and things that Golik hasn't done a good job of attending to. Alright, so let's put that in a group. And then, to make life easy, we are going to start turning things off. Like so. Okay. Turn it down. And now we're going to try a more proper drawing from which we will then paint. Now that's one way to do it. Of course you could just draw the shapes and kind of let the outlines fall where they will. And I should probably demonstrate that in another video, but I don't want to use that technique right now. Technique I'm referring to is that instead of drawing the background or drawing whatever you're drawing, instead you would draw shapes of color and then add layers of like shadowing to sort of create gradations of tone and whatnot. So anyway, that's the story behind that. Okay. How do we want to do this? I think I want to zoom in close and get a better feel for the detail. I think we'll put 3 little wingdingers. Yes, friends, in the real world, those are called wingdingers. And I'm gonna, the narrative I'm going to tell myself is this. Because this is handcrafted, these don't have to be exactly the same. Why? Because they were handcrafted. So they're each a little bit unique. That's just a stupid story I'm telling myself to excuse the fact that I don't want to try to make them all the same. Which, of course, would be easy to do. Hey, Sifter. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Okay, and the same thing with this. If it's handcrafted, we're going to assume that there would be some variance in the vertical of the post, because every one of those was carved individually by a human being. See how we can, well, I don't like that. See how we can just like make up stories to excuse whatever we're doing. I will say that I guarantee you the audience doesn't care. Not at all. Alright, so I'm gonna have a little bit of a blanky kind of hanging over, right? We want to keep this a little bit on the silly side, I think. Now we just need to put in some wrinkles and make a mess of it. And that, of course, is what Salud is responding to when he notices what a mess Golik's bed is. He has not done a good job of making his bed in the morning, right? Not bad, friends, not bad at all. So we're going to pretend this is actually a fairly modern style pillow-ish. Whatever that means. Now, just do the best vertical we can manage here. Okay, and theoretically, there's got to be something that's sort of attaching the bed to the bed posts. So I am not going to get very specific with that. Boom. Here comes my beautiful princess again. I can hear her coming downstairs. Yeah. She gets up in the morning and I literally say, "Good morning, beautiful princess." N key, 5 key. Okay, we got a little bit of a problem. Pretty obvious problem we have here. This doesn't feel, so I'm probably going to wind up moving the pillow. Just so's you know. Just shows you know. Probably gonna wind up moving the pillow. Am I in erase mode? I think I am. Okay. So, nope, darn it. This is hard to do. See, look at that. It's really hard to make a straight line. Let me flip it over and try it this way. I really want it to be about there. That was close. That was not. Of course you could use the straight line tool to make that easier. Duh. I'm just not feeling like doing it at the moment. So, okay, this works. This can come down like that. I'm using that click on a frame, hold, shift, use arrow key to go to the next frame, release keys. Create a 5.1.1. Oh, okay. Nice. Okay, so we clearly have a pretty severe problem here. But that's okay. We'll fix it here in a minute. So obviously the pillow was simply drawn in the wrong place, like by a mile. So that needs to be like that. Probably more like that, actually. The truth be known. Whoops. Okay, that was lucky. So we're not gonna clarify how in the world the bed connects to the posts. I just don't think that matters that much in this case. Now another problem we have is that this bedpost, now we see, I think actually this is a very good exercise for those who are overly obsessed with getting it right the first time, which is obviously a complete fool's errand. You can't. So I like making mistakes, because when I make mistakes, it reminds you that, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. Just fix them. You know, that's all. Just fix them. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Oop, there was my kind of higher loud voice coming out. Alright, let's look at that. It's not too bad. What do we want to do with that color-wise? Let's play, shall we? I think what we'll do is not solo the layer. Let's turn this layer off. And what is this? Reflection merge and soft shadow merge. Let's get rid of those. Right, I can't think of a single artist who doesn't eyeball what they do. Nice. You missed my question. I'm sorry, dude. Did you consider the real world scale of your background, which should match your characters, or just scale them up by eyeballing? Eyeballing, man. Eyeballing. We're just dicking around, fella. Don't care. I don't care. So call this color CLR, and okay, now let's do this. Let's do a flat layer in order to make our life easier. You guys don't know what I'm talking about. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Because obviously there's a few things at play here. Number one, we could get rid of any red. Number two, we could tighten up those ink lines, right? Or loosen them up. Number three, how do we make sure that we can't paint outside the lines? Wouldn't that be useful? I keep looking up here because I'm thinking the webcam's up there. I forget that it's here. Sorry, guys. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go F key and I'm going to fill this area. Okay, why? Because now I'm going to put that as an erase layer, which means I can't paint outside of the lines now. Cool, huh? Now I can actually go like this. And now there is a problem. As you can see those lines? that line is a function of the brush. I'm using my inking brush that goes from red to black, so I really need to have that brush selected. So, but here the great thing is I can just go like that and it's going to be filled in perfectly. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay, so I can do the same thing here. I can go fill in the posts. The posts are going to be easy. Probably the little balls at the bottom are going to be easy. What's not going to be easy is this part here. Okay, and that should be on raw interpolation, obviously. This I think we'll just have to paint by hand. Okay, so I'm seeing kind of a muted, I don't know why, but I'm kind of just feeling a muted blue color and slightly lighter. Okay, we got leaks. Okay, that's alright. Let's close up our leaks. Okay, not bad, not bad, not bad. Let's take it another notch forward. Yes, come on, that's fine. Okay, now we'll just rotate around. We'll just make that green. We don't care. The colors don't matter much. We'll say that Golik likes green bedding because he's obsessed with money, let's say. I don't know. Okay? Now, the one thing that you want to bear in mind with if you're using a flatting layer or an erase layer, which lately have been using them in concert with one another, is you probably want the flat or the erase layer to be under your lines. So watch this. See that? Now the lines are popping. So you really want it to hem in the color, but not necessarily the lines, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do is, this is really going to be pretty awesome. We're going to add a shadow layer. Now there's two ways we could do this. I don't need to use alpha lock, okay? I don't need to use alpha lock because the erase layer is serving the same exact purpose. Okay, so the goal here is to smack in some shadows and start to get some dimensionality into this stuff. And it's a mix of sort of digital techniques, which is what the erase layer is doing for me, versus traditional techniques, painting. Right? And here we might have a little bit of a shadow-ish kind of thing come onto the bed. Probably don't want it there. You know, we're just totally spitballing here. There's nothing about this that represents reality or physics or anything like that. This is just totally saying, hey, what might we have here to just kind of make it look like it's sort of a little bit more real-ish? Well, for example, from a physics standpoint, what I just did here doesn't make any sense. It kind of makes sense there, because obviously if this is hanging over the bed, then it's flat against the mattress, right? See, you really wouldn't have a, so if there's a shadow here, what you're really seeing is a shadow from some clumped up material in this area, actually. So all we care about is does it look good? That's all we care about. Okay, so you'll see here in a second, like this is going to be pretty easy. We'll just kind of put that under the pillow. That's fine. This obviously is not fine. And then we'll just turn it down. Turn it down until it feels good. End key. Okay, so I'm seeing a lack of dimensionality here. Probably a bit of a shadow zone there. Just make it feel good, you know? Just make it feel good. The point for us as artists is to just have reasonably high standards, demand of yourself that it feels like it's not quite right. Don't keep barreling ahead. Ask yourself, what the heck's wrong? What's going on here? And fix it. Okay, so this is going to be shadow 1, and we're going to have a shadow 2, SHD2. This is going to be broader. Whoops. SHD2. This is going to be broader. I'm going to go ahead and lower this down to something like that, and then we're just going to be very broad with this. Very broad. And, you know, if it doesn't work for some reason, who cares? We'll fix it. We'll redo it. Doesn't matter. Just kind of try. Just try your best. Find a way to make it work. The key is to just have high standards and not settle. Don't settle. And you decide. You guys get to decide what constitutes acceptable or good enough or whatever you want to call it. Nobody else gets to decide that for you. And eventually, perhaps the marketplace will decide. You know, that's certainly true with salt and light. Okay, so what I'm about to do makes absolutely no sense. Yeah? And it doesn't look good either, so I'm going to fill that the rest of the way in, actually. Here. So I'm really just adding 2 levels of gradient or value. That's all. Okay, and we could even take it a step further. What if we say, well, we've got that moonlight coming in the window. Why don't we punch up the reflection a bit? The problem that we have here actually is that I don't think that's bright enough, so I'm going to actually add another layer. See that? We're suggesting that maybe these are made of brass or something. We don't really know. No, you wouldn't have one down there. But you can go in there and it's so simple, you know. It just doesn't take very much. Just pop, 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 little pops. Little pops. Little pops. Just like Bob Ross with his fluffy little clouds. Okay, and then we'll just roll it back a little bit. There. Alright. Now there's one more thing we must consider, which is above. Actually, here's what we can do. Let's do this. Watch this. This is going to seem like an unusual technique. I'm going to put a layer below the bed. I'm going to turn this off for a moment. So we can say, let's just make a stupidly big area like that. Okay. So then what we're going to do now is we're actually going to hit the erase key. And chisel out of our erase layer. Just chisel away from it so you can see what we're doing here. That's what I'm doing. That was easy, right? And then we'll just kind of dial that in. Okay, we don't want to dial that in. We want to dial this in. Okay. And now, when we turn all of our other layers back on, the blue one's obviously very important because the blue one is giving it the day for night cast. Look at that. Now that bed is kind of small. Well, fortunately, it's easy to fix. I love the fact that it's so easy to fix. Just hit the A key and make an adjustment. Now, I see just, make it feel good. Okay. Cool. Let's just look at the. Now we have a couple of what we call in animation tangents. So tangents are going to be bizarre coincidences, like this right here is a tangent where you've got the bedpost that just happens to be exactly lined up with the edge of the window and the curtain. So that's a little objectionable. It's not the end of the world, but it's not ideal. So I think what we'll try to do here is split the difference like that, and then consider this approach as well. We've got the scale of it up pretty good, but I have a feeling that the character is going to bump into it. I don't know. That actually looks about perfect to me. That's crazy. Isn't that crazy? That is awesome. Thank you. Yes, Dead Pianist. I tell you, the thing I love about Dead Pianist, you guys, Dead Pianist has been floating around here for off and on for a long time, a couple of years. Dead Pianist, for some people, they might find it annoying, and I mean this very seriously, Dead Pianist. I don't find you annoying at all. I love the fact that you come in here and you notice things that could be better that no one else notices. And I love that about you. And that's always been true ever since you've been hanging around. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just go like this, and then hit the shift key, and drag this up. Okay, obviously that didn't work. Okay, this is actually really, really interesting. This is really an interesting problem that I never thought about. When I was doing the reflection on the character, just a vertical scaling did the trick. But I'm missing something here. Yeah, we have to show the bottom of the bed. So we can't do what we did with the character. I'm sorry, that was stupid. Okay, so let's do it this way then. Let's just go to the top, put in a new layer, and what we'll do is just do it the hard way. So ultimately, this is probably going to... We should at least turn the blue off, though. The blue is going to skew our colors too much. Whoops. So anyway, yeah, thanks Dead Pianist for pointing that out, because I probably would have forgotten it. Seems to defy belief that I could overlook such an obvious thing, but... Okay, now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to call this reflection. I'm going to move the reflection down. Oh, I guess we can just put it below the ink. Probably it's going to be okay just below the ink. Okay, so let's follow this through. We're just going to do it the old school way, just by feel. And then we'll worry about adding an appropriate level of transparency when we're done. So let's tint this on the blue side, but basically what we want to do is show the... Okay, and this probably should be below the color actually. So I'm going to move this down to here so that I can literally just paint the snot out of this. Fill it in. And, you know, we'll see if it works. Okay, it looks like it's definitely going to have to be darker. This is wrong. Obviously, some of you are out there shouting at your computer screen because it's so obvious that it's wrong. We'll chalk it up to dyslexia. Okay, so really what we need is a line here. So I'm pretty sure. Okay, and we've got a problem with the shadow. The shadow layer is interfering, meaning the erase layer. So for the moment, even though I know it's going to look wrong, I'm going to go ahead and move this back up to here so that I have a better beat on what I'm trying to do, and I'm just going to do it the hard way to sort of paint around the problem. So if that doesn't make sense to you guys, don't sweat it. We'll get there. It's like a lot of things, you know. No bed base. Well, I mean, come on, Sifter. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the hardware that holds everything together. For now, I'm going to defer on that question. I'm going to cheat. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat. Okay, for a couple reasons, actually. Okay, bear with me here, friends. This will all make sense shortly. Okay. So I want to go ahead and put a little bit of this color here. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. First of all, the reflection. If we look at the reflection on Salud. Okay, well, in the place of that reflection layer, the transparency of it is baked in, so we can't use that as a reference. So let's just play with this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a Gaussian blur on it. Last Gaussian blur I used, well, we can use 5 pixels and just do it multiple times if we want to. But honestly, friends, I would say one thing I'm thinking about here is that this is not going to be dark enough. So I'm going to smack that in there. And we're just trying to figure out what feels good here. Whoops. And I'm sure that I'm, to a degree, cheating the physics of it. Okay, reflection layer definitely needs to be darker. That's a little too much. I'm going to crank the saturation because it's so transparent that, okay, let's get rid of the shadow. Okay, that was stupid. That didn't work. Sometimes, friends, you're talking trial and error. Okay, yeah. Let's crank this back up. And now, just thinking. I think I want to actually pump the highs, crank the lows so I get more saturation. Just, you know, there just really needs to be a hint of it, I think. Let's turn this back on. And the shadow layer almost seems to be doing more harm than good now, honestly. I actually think we'd look better with the shadow layer taken back out. What I'm thinking is, in other words, the cast shadow. Let's take the cast shadow out. What is this layer? I don't even know what that layer is. Let's take the cast shadow out, but take the reflections and darken them down a bit so that they start serving both purposes. Ah, there we go. Now we're getting a little bit of a sense of both shadow and reflection. Anybody want to object? I mean, are you guys okay with this? I mean, I feel like we can't really pump the saturation anymore, unfortunately. So this is what the layer is. If we doubled it in overlay mode, yeah, we can't squeeze any more saturation out of it. It just is. So I baked those down, but basically, I think that feels pretty good. I mean, like I said, does anybody want to complain? Okay, I'm gonna roll this and take a couple minute break, and then we're gonna dial in the overall level of the bed. I think we're gonna have to use a filter mask because the overall level of the bed is number one, it's too bright. Number two, there's no cast shadow from the posts onto the bed, which this post obviously would cast a shadow. Those are the biggies. So I'm gonna roll the scene and take a short break, and then I will be back. So for me, that means we will kill the webcam, and now we will kill the microphone, and we will be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. Excuse me. Do we want the webcam on? Well, I guess it can't hurt. Okay, what we would want to do here, the simplest solution is this. Just add a layer, paint it black. Quoting the Rolling Stones, paint it black. Okay. Then just turn on alpha lock and then find what feels good. About there. Good. Then the only other thing we need is shadow on the bedpost. Tint. Good. B key. I'm just going to draw this here, and I'm going to assume that if we're going like that, then we're going to be something like this. Something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be credible. It's got to be, doesn't want it to be too much darker than the others. However, if we're going to put that in there, then we probably need to punch up. Sorry, not erase mode. Probably need to punch up the central shadow line on the rest of these posts, like so. Let's punch up the contrast. Okay, now having done that, again, let's just feel this. Probably about there. Okay. Let's render our shot. Might as well. Hopefully Krita's not going to decide to crash now. It could happen. Hopefully it won't. Cool. So if we look back at the show, just let it flow, let it flow. Okay. It's not the greatest in terms of perspective and whatnot, but it's probably fine. Basic problem being the lines. Ooh, wow. Okay. So I just figured out that we can solve the lines problem by simply turning their opacity down. That's it. That's all we need to do. Sweet. So easy. So easy. Okay, that's it. Render that, and this shot is, as far as I'm concerned, at least for now, done. I am curious though what this particular layer is. Kind of bugging me. Ah, the sketch. We don't need that in there. Look how many layers we've got. Isn't that crazy? And yet, because we don't have any transform masks or anything, it takes a second. Takes a second to do the animation cache. But okay, in my preview over here, I'm going to turn this, get this back to where it needs to be. I think we're off by 1 frame. And why is that? It's showing me this shot in the preview, in the clip itself. whereas the but it's not really showing exactly where it is in the clip. Okay. So the next thing on the agenda obviously is that shot, but I like what I'm seeing. There's some things I still could, well, that could stand to be improved, but this basically, honestly, everything else is going to be comparatively easy, because I mean we do have to do the background painting here, but you know, the ink and paint on the characters is all mostly done. Right? And then once we get past here, fully, just to show this, fully 3/5 of the shots, 4/7 of it is going to be reusing shots. So, sheesh, we are in good stead. So as you guys know, one of my goals is to figure out, hey, how long does this take, and how long, you know, how quick can I do it and have it not suck? That's the goal. This is an amazing looking shot, though, I have to say. There's things you could criticize, but basically it's an amazing looking shot. I could see, like right here, I'm feeling like the, let's look at Salud's. Yeah, let's look at this. Okay, I'm just going to call this Salud. Salud is the beginning of his name. And I'm stealing whoever gave me the idea the other day of encoding the name Roger into the name. So his name is something like Saluda Roger Cheminabad or something like that. I can't remember what the name is, but so what I'm wondering is, shouldn't maybe this be pumped up a little bit more? Oh, look at that. Guys, come on. Come on, am I right? Oh my gosh, that is just it's amazing looking, you know. Now you do have a little problem with the shadow. The shadow down here isn't quite meeting his right foot. I don't know if that really matters that much. It probably does. Probably does. Let's fix that. So, well, fortunately the shadow is right here. It's in its own layers, so it is fixable. Was it Ross's idea? Okay, yeah. It was a good idea, Ross, if you're here. I don't know if Ross is here, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to steal that idea. I think it was a great idea. Thanks, Sifter, for pointing that out. Oh, I see what the problem is. The dubious choice I made, which felt like it was physically wrong, meaning wrong from the standpoint of physics, but visually looked good, was to put the reflections actually above the shadow. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but it felt good. But actually, yeah, that's what we need to do. When we do that, it feels like maybe take a little bit of gas out of the cast shadow and see how that goes. Let's just see. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually. Why, if we solo this, why are we still seeing, we're still seeing, like, that's taking, look at that. That reflection is taking quite a bite out of the shadow. I think probably that's the answer. Just split the difference. That feels pretty good to me. Okay, let's see how she looks, and I think we're... Yeah, right? Am I right? Okay. I think we're done. That's amazing how easy this is. To just dial it in and have something that just feels good to look at, you know? To me, that's what I'm seeing. Nice. I love the way he moves. That slide. I didn't originally, I wasn't going to do that. That wasn't the plan, but Now, let me show you a way that you can make this even cooler, if you really wanted to. In the salute group, what if, think about this, guys. What if we took and said, okay, we've got this sunbeam coming down. Why don't we just go like this? Okay, put that on there, but alpha lock it. Okay, so I've got the wrong brush, obviously. But now let's take this and just kind of erase back out of it. Watch this. This is going to be cool. Like I said, it's to me it's funny that it's just so stupidly easy to do this stuff. Okay, so what did that do for me? Well, you can kind of see where the light's coming across him, you know? Okay, I think the last thing I did as far as an effect was a Gaussian blur, so let's just hit Control F, and it doesn't seem to be blurring it much, so do filter, Gaussian blur, boom. Isn't that cool? Look at that. So now he's, I would say, right there. I think what I'll do, I'm going to use my airbrush really small so that it basically has blur baked into it, essentially. Just go like that. And we're going to see if we get lucky where it just looks good, you know, based on the way he's moving. Okay. Yeah, that was what we would call a very cheap improvement. Now the one thing we'd need to do here is that it has to be angled a little bit more. See that? Like that. So, I mean, it's just stuff you try, you know? Why not, right? Okay, and then having done that, it feels to me like it could be even a little more dense. But that may backfire. These things often do. It definitely feels a little strong now. Yeah, that's not going to work. So we'll just say, just give it a little touch. Just a little touch. It's fine. And I think I'll erase back out of this a little bit. Yeah, that feels good. That feels good. Yep, I like it. You guys like it? Liking what we see here? And then what we could do on this shadow layer is, we'll call this wall shadow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to go Control Insert, and we will forgive the slide. But once he lands here, why don't we insert another frame? Not in erase mode, and just punch that up a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. And then actually, if you wanted to drive it home even more, what you'd probably want to do is actually pull a little bit back out here. So again, point for me being, it's so quick and easy to try this stuff that it's like, why not, you know? But yeah, I think that's basically a heck of a shot. And then I think if everything is looking relatively good, then we will stop. I think this would be a good place to stop. I don't really feel like starting one of the next close-up shots here tonight. I'm not really up for that. The whole live stream, if you don't count the 2 hours. Well, if you don't count the 2 hours that were pre-recorded, we've already gone an hour and a half since then. So. Oh, Golic, you are a messy boy. You're a messy boy, Golic. You really need to clean up after yourself better. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. That's the gist. Okay, guys, any questions or comments before we wrap it up? I'm guessing not. Oh, okay, Sifter. Sifter. Got it. I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, dude. All right. You were talking about this. This is what you were talking about. You were talking about. Let's go to the color layer and put a. What Sifter was talking about was the headboard. That's what he meant by bed base, I'm sure. So let's go to the color layer, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to. That's not what I wanted to do. Sample that color. Okay. So you're talking about. You're saying what? Dude, you're not putting in a headboard? Okay, why? Yes, it's because of the erase layer. There it is. Sorry. So you're talking about having something like this, which then, of course, because of the layering that I have, and obviously it doesn't have to be a half moon shape, but if you're going to do it, let's just entertain the idea here for half a second, just because it's fun. Why not? Okay. If we were going to do it, then we need to clean. Well, that actually should be in there. And we need to. We're just going to do it the cheating way and just paint around stuff. Okay. If we were going to do that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a highlight, and what I'm going to do is alpha lock the painting so that I can then go like this. And that's really not quite right. Hello? Why is it in erase mode? Alpha lock? Why is it erasing? What am I missing here? Why am I erasing? That's kind of weird. I want to stop everything right now and think what's going on here, because this is very strange. Oh, I'm not erasing. I'm sampling the wrong color. Okay, turn this off, turn this off. Sorry about that. That's a little embarrassing. Yes, the tint layer has to be turned off. Wow. Major stupid attack there, folks. Major stupid attack. Sample that. That highlight in there. Okay, erase mode. Let's just clean this up, and then we'll just do a quick dial it in with curves. So I am going to, just for consistency, I'm just going to kludge an outline around it. And then what we're going to do is start turning everything back on. So that we can then take the headboard and just looking for it to start feeling good. Something like that. Okay, let's go with that for the moment. And then we've got the cast shadow here. So if we're going to do that, then we would also have something of this nature. It's a bit tricky because we're essentially doubling the shadows over themselves, which means I may have to make a change in the color as well on the headboard itself. So we'll just run with that for the moment. And then here, if we're going to do that, I'm feeling like we would probably want to actually raise it up a bit. Something of that nature. Okay, this is actual size, so we're definitely not going to get away with that. So that means we need to turn the tint and the color correction off. It's probably one of the most clunky things about this type of work is you've got to, if you've done any color correction, you've got to go in and start getting rid of things in order to clean it up. Okay, I see what's going on. It's actually the shadow that's the problem, so that makes life easy if I'm correct. I'm pretty sure I am. Bedpost shadow. That should be black. B key. Yes, there we go. And you could take it further if you want to and put some interesting well, what you do is something like headboard decoration. Now watch this. Watch how we're going to do this. This is going to be crazy. We're going to do here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and put in a bunch of decorative stuff, okay? Just stuff. I'll put a few circles in there, just stuff. Okay, then what we're going to do is take the decoration and turn it down. Okay, so you get a shadow aspect. Then what we're going to do is double it, and we're going to take this layer and actually make it okay, hold on, something's wrong. Let's solo that layer. We could just invert it actually, come to think of it. Control Shift I. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, M key. Why is this supposed to be white? That's what I'm trying to do. And when I put it here, I don't see it. So that's kind of bad. Okay, yeah, so just so you guys know, this is a little strange. What I want to do is, yes, okay, that's what I was trying to do. So we're trying to make it look like it's etched into the bed, right? Okay, so we've got this, this, and this. So what I'm going to do is bake these together. So I'm going to hit Control E, and then what I'm going to do, turn off the symmetry, and what we're going to do is a perspective, which is a brutally difficult way to do it. Actually, it's kind of hard to make it look good, but that kind of gets it a little better than it was. We'll accept that, and then we need to do a little erasing. So B key, erase mode. We might be getting into the zone here. We're sort of tinkling in the wind, as they say, with changes that aren't actually all that useful. What I want to do now is crank that up and crank that down. I want to increase the contrast so that I can then dial it in. I don't particularly like it, actually. It doesn't hurt anything, but I wouldn't say it doesn't look good. If we double it, that's a little darker, so that's good. If we bake that down, let's do that twice. Yes, actually that's what I wanted. I wanted ridiculous contrast on it so that I can then turn it all the way down and dial it in. Something like that. Now if we look at it actual size, what we're looking for is to get the contrast to the point where you can actually even see it. One could argue that the light and the dark are inverted here actually. if there's any light bleeding over, it would be bleeding around, you know, which is kind of ridiculous, but Control Shift I. Okay, why is that not working? That's irritating me. Layer, image. I don't use this very often. Scale image to new size. That's Control Alt I. Where the heck is the... I guess it'd be filter, colors. Nope. Adjust, invert, Control I. Did I hit? I must have hit Control Shift I when I meant Control I. I think that's what I did. Sorry. Yes, that actually makes more sense. For those of you who are physics minded, you'll probably agree, I suspect. So another thing I want to consider here is, what if we used overlay mode? Yes, so that this effect is naturally interacting with the colors behind it, which is really what we want. So it's pretty hard to see though. I mean, that's actual size, so that's probably okay. Boom. Alright, Control R, and if this looks good, I'm quitting. I've earned the right to quit. It's been a long day, and I want to chillax. I've already had my tasty beverage, to be truthful. Alright, let's watch it play. Not bad, friends. Not bad. We'll get a nice sound effect on the when he does the slide across the floor. As I said, I did not plan to do the slide thing, but when I tried it, it's like, oh my god, it looks good. You know, it's kind of funny, you know, and just see this guy that's like kind of just working around and want to check out the shot, baby doll? Huh? She's giving me a like a like oh. Not quite sure how to interpret that. Well, that's alright. I like what I see, friends. Okay, so tab key, save, and with that, I am signing off. So thanks for hanging out, guys. As you guys know, there will be more later. Wait, Darren just noticed something. His duster disappears when he gets to the bed. Oh, thank you, Darren. Yep, you're right. The duster's supposed to be in there. Good eye, brother. Good eye. Okay, so let's go up here. And the problem is, of course, that Salud was baked down. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cheat. Always cheat when you can. Alright, so I'm going to turn off everything except Salud. There's really no easy way to do that other than the manual way. So let's do that. Okay, and so now what we're going to do, we are going to assume that we can get away with the following. S key, it's going to be scaled a little bit, so it's going to be blurred a little bit, but we could always try sharpening too if we needed to. Now actually that's wrong. This is wrong. What I need to do is just grab this, Control C, and we're going to have to add another layer. There's no doubt about that. Control V. Okay, why is that black? Solo the layer. Why is it black? That's okay. Moving fast here, and it looks to me like I probably selected from the wrong layer. Yep, I selected from the shadow layer. It was supposed to be this layer, so that was dumb. So Control C. This layer, I believe, is the empty layer. So let's go Control Shift V into there. And that has no animation keyframes on it. So therefore, looky. All we want to do is get to there. Take this layer. We don't need a selection. We just hit the animate Okay, we're going to scale it up a little bit, like that. Pop that into his hand. And the likelihood is, because that is sticking out, like it might be catching more light, but once we turn everything on, we'll know for sure. But I would say, hey baby. So I need to add one animation keyframe. Valerie's looking over my shoulder, which means I want this to look good for my baby. So we'll get rid of that. Take this, hit the Control M. Let's tone this down a little bit to something like that. And I do believe, friends, that we're done. Here it goes. Save our work. Huh. Guys, come on. Am I right? That's it. We will render it, and we are done. Thanks, Darren. Good eye. I appreciate you guys keeping me honest. And with that, as you guys know, there will be more later.